We'll call to order this workshop. Thank you. For the purpose of reviewing budget items by the City of Siloam Springs Board of Directors, October 18th, 2022. Christina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. Before we start this evening, I'd like to mention that after we review the budget, a recap of the revenues and expenses will be presented with the revenue format modified based on the Information Director Allen requested at the last meeting. Tonight, we will walk through the highlights of each fund, beginning with the general funds. After covering the highlights, I will ask for questions before moving on to the next fund. Unless otherwise stated, comparisons are to prior year budget, beginning with the general fund. Administration revenue begins on page 4. There's an increase of 4% in property taxes based on trend. 2 weeks ago, we discussed sales tax relative to current year projections and prior year actual numbers. Sales tax for 2023 is budgeted 9% higher than the 2022 budget, but only 4% higher than anticipated 2022 actual receipts. Charges to other departments increased by 15%, mainly due to the proposal to move inventory purchasing personnel to the finance department. The remaining increase is due to the 5% COLA provided in 2022. Interest income is up 58% due to increases in interest rates. State aid is up 10% based on trend. County sales tax is up 11% based on trend. Budgeted transfers increased 4.75% in 2023. The budgeted transfers are based on policy. The total increase in revenue is 7.75%. Expenditures begin on page 5. Personnel costs are up 11% compared to prior year. This includes the proposed 5% COLA and compensation plan. Healthcare costs increased 3%, and there were changes in healthcare benefit elections increasing those costs. Overall, operations declined by 5%. Insurance increased 27%, or almost $7,860. This increase in premium will be reflected throughout the budget. System support and supplies increased $6,000 for a virtual webmaster program for the city's website. Dues and training increased $10,000 for utility board training. Museum funding increased by $20,000. There's a letter from their board included in the back of the budget requesting to expand their contract's scope of services in exchange for increasing their funding by an additional $20,000. Based on the board's prior discussions, staff thought it appropriate to go ahead and budget for the increase in case the board approves an amendment to their contract. Economic retail analysis is declining by $33,000. There is an offsetting increase of $20,000 in economic development incentive and contingency for a net decline of $13,000. Funding levels for Main Street and the Chamber are at the same level as last year. There was a transfer of $500,000 to the street fund in 2022 for the Lake Francis rebuild. There are no capital projects budgeted in the administration fund. And that is on page 6. On page 7, the only change to the personnel schedule is the proposed change of the Human Resources Manager to Human Resources Director. Are there any questions related to this fund?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Christina, on page 5, the professional fees, the revised budget went up to 85,000.
That is for the current year, and I believe that is related to some of the board-approved professional fees related to.
The broadband study.
Okay, that was a large amount, so you hadn't mentioned it, so I wanted to draw attention to that. Thank you.
Yes. Are there any other questions? Okay. Police revenue begins on page 8. Local sales tax increased by 9%. And SRO grant program is expected to increase by 40,000 or 24% due to the wage increases from the compensation plan. Donations for 2022 included the school district's share of communications and of a communications antenna. Court fines increased 5% based on trend. Lot fee insurance turnback is expected to increase 19%. This is a function of payroll. AR ETS 911 board income will decrease 6% or $14,000 based on trend. Government grants are expected to decline 36% or $17,000 for decreased STEP grant funds. Overall, revenues are expected to increase by $143,000 or 7%. Expenditures begin on page 9. Personnel costs increased by $784,000 or 16%. The main driver for this increase is the addition of 2 new positions and implementation of the proposed compensation plan. The new STEP plan includes raising the minimum hourly rate from $18.50 to $19.70 per hour. 1 retirement payout was included in benefit pay in 2022. Overall, operations increased by $103,000 or 17%. However, a number of accounts changed, and I'm going to go through the list of changes over $5,000. Telephone costs increased by almost $5,400 for 12 additional lines, including new vehicle mobile device internet access. Insurance increased $26,000 or 29%. Property, auto, and workers' compensation insurances have all increased for 2023. Vehicle operations is fuel, which increased throughout the city. For PD, it increased over $39,000 or 60%. This might also be a good time to just let you know that when I amend the current year budget, I will also be amending fuel at that time because fuel prices have increased so much for the current year. So vehicle and equipment maintenance increased 15% based on trend. Uniforms, protective equipment increased 33% or $10,000 for the purchase of protective equipment for the new positions. Dues and training increased by $5,000 or 9% for new personnel. Dues and training AR ETS 911 for dispatchers increased by $5,000 or 25% for increased training. Benton County AR ETS 911 fee increased 53% for a cell phone bill from the county that became the city's responsibility starting in 2022. On page 11, capital outlay. Capital outlay is purchased with public safety tax funds. And this year, the main purchase for PD is vehicles, including leased vehicles. Other purchases include funds to complete the building at the training center and provide personal protective equipment for the SWAT team. On page 12, 2 officers were added, a sergeant and a police officer. Are there any questions related to this fund?
Christina? So maybe the police chief can answer that. As I went through there, I highlighted numerous things. So just overall, I just want to make sure you guys, with a new training facility, are we being tied, or are you comfortable with training, with weapons, with the amount of munitions budgeted? And second, I feel like I should throw a bunch of stuff at you. Do we have, maybe we discussed this before, with a vote coming up, do we have a general number on what it would take for body cams? Did we come up with a number on that? I don't remember.
Sure, I have it.
Probably changed since last time we talked.
The newest body camera quote that I got is 2 weeks old, $600,000. And that will be not just body cameras, that will be, once we go to body cameras, that will change our in-car camera systems also, which.
That was that. And then the other, just from a training standpoint and the dynamics that are going on these days, and since we're expanding the facility, I mean, I know there's the numbers there, but are you comfortable with your training numbers and the equipment required to meet that additional facility expansion?
Yes, sir, especially at the academy, this will help, or I say the academy, our training center. If you remember, this board approved a new target system a couple budgets back. The way it is now, we only have one briefing area at the police department. So when they're doing briefing and other trainings, and we're doing qualifications, we have nowhere to meet. Or if we have malfunctions or gun errors, things like that we have to correct, we have to drive all the way back to the PD. The 1,500 square foot building will have an armory, not where we keep weapons, but where we can fix things. It'll be a small classroom, get out of the rain. Yes, but to answer your question, yes, sir, I think we'll be very adequate.
Anyone else?
Revenue for the fire department begins on page 13. Overall, the revenue will increase by $150,000. Local sales tax increased by 9%. Ambulance services and revenues from ambulance runs are budgeted lower based on trend. Intermunicipal services will increase 5% based on the contract. Lot fee insurance turnback will increase as a function of payroll. Act 833 funds increases by $53,000. These grant funds will be used for radios and personal protective equipment. Expenditures begin on page 14. The 19% increase of $865,000 in personnel costs is due to the proposed raises, as well as 3 additional firefighter positions and a fire safety specialist. Please note this does not include the 6 firefighters approved with the grant at the last board meeting. Utilities increased $5,000 or 10% based on trend. Insurance is increasing $41,000 based on property and workers' comp insurance rates increasing. System support and supplies increased $5,400 for scheduling and other software not on the city's network. Vehicle operations increased $15,000 due to fuel cost increases. Vehicle operation EMS increased $9,500 due to fuel cost increases. Vehicle and equipment maintenance is increasing $5,000 based on trend. Vehicle and equipment maintenance EMS is increasing $10,000 also based on trend. Dues and training increased $5,000 or 10% for new positions. Dues and training EMS increased $5,000 or 8% for new positions and membership with the American Heart Association. EMS accreditation expenses increased $10,000 for full reaccreditation in 2023. Reaccreditation occurs every 3 years. Sales tax funded equipment increased $15,000 due to new positions and equipment cost increases. Sales tax funded personal protection and equipment is up $5,000 for new positions. Professional fees decreased $24,000 as 2022 included a community risk assessment study. Act 833 expenses are up $5,000. This is money from the state for firefighter training and equipment. Expenditures continue on page 15. The increase in bad debt is a function of receivables. And total operations increased 13% or $130,000. Page 16 has the capital outlay. Capital for the fire department in 2023 is purchased from public safety tax funds. And significant capital expenses include updates to self-contained breathing apparatus for $350,000 and a Fire Station 1 addition Phase 1 for $450,000, which involves adding a new truck bay. On page 17, the new positions are reflected in the personnel schedule: 3 firefighters and a fire prevention specialist. The 6 firefighters will be added to this schedule before final approval of the budget. Are there any other questions related to this fund?
Tina? So I'll just continue my trend. So the traffic preemption system, that's as you're approaching a light and you could trip it, or not trip it, but
Yes, that's correct. So the initial phase of this will, in the electric department budget, you'll also see some infrastructure for this, which will take care of the traffic lights on 412. Our portion of that in our budget will outfit each vehicle with that system. And that will allow it to, as we're running emergent to some emergency, then it will recognize our lights and our emitters on our vehicles and will give us the green and turn everything else red.
it's a safety. What's the phase in on that across? Is your goal to do, are we doing all of it? Because, you know, we don't like roundabouts because we want to spend more money on gadgets. So what's that look? Is that a 4 or 5 year plan? I mean, I'm sure it's going to take time, right?
Sure, there's a set cost per intersection, and so this first phase of it, so to speak, if you want to call it a phase, would be the 412 areas, and then we would just implement the rest of it as we see the need in, you know, high-profile intersections that we see to be the biggest issues. I think, I don't have the numbers, but I think if there's 6 or so on 412, 6 or 8 intersections on 412, I think there was 20-something throughout the city, so this would represent about a third of the total.
Then the increase on, I'm just curious on the Act 833 funds. Was that driven by census, or
So,
crank this up?
yeah, the total we get every year roughly increases a small amount,
Right.
but that fund specifically continues to build if we don't use it. And so there's a larger amount of money in that fund. When we use above and beyond what we get in revenue, then we take out of the bank, so to speak, and show that as revenue. So we're not getting more money, we're just using money we have accumulated over the last several years within that fund.
Then, hey, just lastly, I'm happy to see your SCBA's, your extraction dryers and the vent systems all being upgraded, and you finally got that. You know, originally, we had that additional phase 1 that turned into, but I'm glad to see that's finally getting accomplished for you guys, so I appreciate it. Looks good. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Thank you, Chief.
Parks and Recreation, revenue begins on page 18. Revenues are up 17% over 2022 due to the following. Hotel motel sales tax increases of 9% or $10,000. Registration for all programs is expected to be down by 30% or $13,000 based on current year trends. Community building rentals increased $13,000 based on trend. Cemetery lot sales are up 20%. Private grants are decreasing $64,000. In 2022, we had a Walton Family Foundation grant for the kayak park. Transfers from other funds include $77,000 by streets for right-of-way mowed by Parks Maintenance. And increases in the use of the Family Aquatic Center resulted in higher combined revenues of almost $32,000 or 33% based on trend. That would be trend since COVID. Expenditures begin on page 19. Increase in personnel of $75,000 or 9% includes the wage increase and compensation plan. Insurance increased by $12,000 or 14%, mainly due to increases in property insurance and workers' compensation. Vehicle operations increased and is up $5,000 for fuel. Special events decreased 16% or $6,100 based on trend. Payments to contractors increased $50,000 as Memorial Park landscaping is proposed to be contracted out, as well as the Highway 412 medians. Recreation support decreased 47%. With a new coordinator and manager, programs not already in place are being reassessed. Operations increased almost $22,000 or 4%. On page 20, expenditures continue. The Family Aquatic Center operations will decrease 9%, mainly due to the decreased capital expenditures offset by slight increases in utilities, chemicals, training, and supplies based on trend. Prior year capital included a security update. Page 21, The main capital projects for 2023 are improvements to Sager Creek. In addition, there are matching funds for grants budgeted for the city's share of the Dogwood Springs Trail. Page 22. Changes to the personnel schedule include reclassifying the cemetery groundskeeper to a cemetery sexton and one parks maintenance position as a cemetery technician. Are there any questions related to this fund?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I'm just curious, and this is on page 18, the entry and registration has gone down. This is registration in some of the participation in the sports programs and different things.
Yeah, so we've hired a new recreation coordinator, and the new parks manager is currently evaluating to see what kind of programs we're offering compared to what's offered along the corridor. We've been told and have recognized that traditional sports like softball, the participation has dipped quite a bit, and people have more interest like pickleball and things of that nature. So we're reevaluating our programs and try to figure out if we can get in line with what the community is really looking for.
Does any of this include anything out at the ball diamonds? Any upgrades at the ball diamonds of the fields?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Christina? So Dawn, I think you know what I'm gonna charm in on. I hope so. So I guess my first question will be, and I'm gonna bring it up multiple times until the year changes, but do we have any planning for Parks and Recs becoming its own department as a division and not under community development?
Absolutely.
Vision on that time frame, or is it in my lifetime?
I certainly
Not
hope so.
God, so.
No,
Okay, I was just checking it out.
I certainly hope so. That was a board goal. We're continuing to evaluate that and timing. There's a lot of pros, we believe, to it, not a lot of cons. So the timing is something we're discussing currently.
Those are my words of encouragement. Now, my words of frustration is why I don't like being on committees. I only like to be on committees if they're successful, and I feel like the Sager Creek Committee was successful in providing some points. But when we look at the history, I feel like 23, we're doing exactly what we have done for years. We drain the creek, we put a Band-Aid on it, and we go back, and we're gonna do that for, I don't know what that lifespan is. So carrying the torch for the man I replaced is, as I look at Sager Creek stabilization, overhanging rock, and Sager Creek repair on the dam at $250,000, I think we're way under budgeted. I think you're gonna run into problems. And I would also encourage us to perhaps take the design engineering for East Main Bridge and remove it from the 23 budget and roll that over here. That wall that overhangs, that continues around, the tree needs to be removed, and North Maxwell may very well not survive another year. It has trees growing out of it, and it has all the cement is gone, and so the nip and tuck work has to be done. And so when I think of that whole bank and how that river flows, I don't know why we're just not encompassing that and just getting it all done at some form, knowing that we're gonna come back and we don't know what that time frame is, to perhaps change the bridge out. I know we have a sewer line replacement on Maxwell, and eventually reapproach this board with a significant large number for East Main Bridge replacement. But it's frustrating as a committee member, because we've sat here as a board saying that we have the money, and then we just turn around and we're gonna do exactly what I've watched since I sat at the firehouse at Station 1. It's concerning. It's concerning that we're gonna continue that trend. So how do we stop that trend?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So when we did the presentation and brought the recommendations of the committee to the board, there were 4 different recommendations. The first was structural, second was maintenance, third was water quality, and the last was aesthetics. And so as we spoke in that workshop, it was the belief of the committee to move forward first with the maintenance before we started with with the structural before we started with the maintenance, because that would incur some design and a public input process. We didn't want to wait on the structural things as it related to the rock overhang and the dam repair. And then, like I said, the third was the water quality, and the last was the aesthetic. In the presentation, we added a timeline and an initial cost estimate for that structural recommendation, and that was to be included in the 2023 budget. The maintenance, water quality, and aesthetics, we also had a timeline, but we placed to be included in future budgets because we understood that we needed to move first with the structural and then bring in a design firm to help us with the rest of it. And that was what was presented in the workshop.
I'm going to disagree that structurally, I think we're way under budget. There's no way you're going to get in there with manual labor and stabilize that for a couple of $100,000. I just don't see that as a reality. The dam, I would argue that you're going to put a Band-Aid on it for $50,000, but you're not solving any long-term problems. And structurally, wall stabilization along North Maxwell, we've already lost part of the wall, and I am preaching being proactive instead of reactive, and I don't have any fears. I walk by there a lot. It's my routine, and I don't want to leave this board without voicing a very loud concern is that when that collapses, and the potential is extremely high because we've ignored it for many, many moons, I want to be that voice that's echoing right now. We're under budget for 23, and that needs to be increased at some level. And where I see in this budget to take the money without increasing anything is from not work on the East Main Bridge design until we get Sager Creek going, because we have no idea what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
If East Main Bridge is done, we do a design for it, and then the community kicks in 23 and says, we love the connectivity path that we may or may not get along Sager Creek, then that interest zone's also going to be by East Main Bridge. And so I'm just looking in there to where to increase the funding for that.
The design for East Main is needed because our goal is to go after grants for that, and we can't go after the grants. We don't have a design. So the infrastructure grants that are federal dollars are out there. That's the goal for having that in there, because again, we can't apply without a design. And then going back to the maintenance recommendations, Director Burns, the repair of the Maxwell Street wall and the pedestrian bridge was to be assessed in that timeline for the maintenance piece. The velocities, from what we understood from the structural engineer that reviewed Sager Creek, was at the bend of the creek and where the scouring was happening, was to take care of that first, and that would help with the modeling upstream at the bend in the creek, exactly where those walls are, and along with the bridge as well. And so working with Public Works when they do the Maxwell Street sewer improvement, that will be addressed at that time as well, potentially with a clear span bridge or what have you. That's all a part of our plan. And again, the East Main Bridge design is simply for us to be able to go after the grants for it.
I voiced my concern on that. Now I'm at the kayak park. So at the kayak park, and we brought this up before, at least I have, and I'll just speak on my behalf, is just went down there over the weekend. It's exactly what it was designed to do right now. We had a canoe club down there teaching classes. We had avid paddlers in the water, and then we had a few families just enjoying the area, right? So as I look at 23, we've got 3 or 4 months out of the year where it's madman. It's just crazy town. And so, I don't see anywhere in here for, looking at a kayak park attendee for 3 months out of the year. That's a potential another revenue course to offset those additional costs. So do we have anything for 23 that's gonna help us address what we just have been experiencing for the X number of years?
Absolutely. It's in the, so is it under the, so what our plan is, and we were just
Did I
meeting,
miss it?
it's not a capital, so it's in the, I believe it's in the, payment to contractors. Payment to contractors, we increased that to 55,000 from 5,000. Part of that plan is to, look at doing an RFP for an outfitter to come down and basically do what you're, discussing, along with the collecting fees for parking, that we're proposing in next year. A part of the 2022 budget, I think there was $45,000 for kayak park parking. Our goal with that is to take that money this fall and address and add space where we need it with the concrete to allow for that to happen, for an outfitter or a attendee to have parking and work the gate. And basically the way it will work is once the park is full, we'll close the gate and then they'll operate it. That's what the payment with the increase of payment of contractors is for.
That's gonna be a third party doing that? Is that what we're saying?
We would hope so.
Madam Mayor,
Yes. Ma'am.
I just want to join his bandwagon. I think that there's a lot of discussion going on when we need some more action. Downtown, our park it's sad that you can go some of the towns that are not flourishing as much as us, and they take better care of what's important to them. And I think downtown should be very important to us. Our creek, the walls, we should open that up for people to come and visit more. We've got things blocked off. We've got weeds growing out of the walls. We've got chipping. We've got murky water. We don't have a flow of water. I don't think that we can address one of these issues at a time. I think we need to tackle all of them at once because they build upon each other. And I don't think that fixing one is going to help us put another one off to next year's budget or the next year's budget. I think that we need to take a big bite and get going on it. It's not going to last much longer. And the safety issues are a big concern too. You know, we want it to be used. We don't want it to be barricaded from us with caution tape.
I would agree. Our goal is to get people back in contact with the water. So we could look at bringing this all to you in one large contract and potentially at that point in time do a budget amendment to address all at the same time. We can absolutely do that.
I think that would be best because after our last meeting, I thought that we were supposed to have some stuff brought back to us after you had done some digging around. And I don't think that it's getting done as quick as we need it to be because it's very vital. I think it's as vital as repairing streets. I think if we're trying to keep Siloam the wonderful town that it is and to show that we take care of our amenities and our natural resources, we need to do some digging there. And then to go to the kayak park, I've always thought that was throwing bad money after bad. If we can't, it seems like every year we have another problem with it. I know it's being used, which is a great thing, but it's every year it's just another mountain of problems that we have to work with. And we've got other problems in the city we need to take care of too. And then, what was the other thing, Director Burns, that you were talking about?
I have no idea where you're at right now.
Well, you should pay attention. I just think that when you talk about the ball fields, I know that there's a lot of traveling teams now, but I don't think that we ought to alleviate from just the rec players. And I don't want to see us go away from having baseball leagues, softball leagues for just the rec players. And I don't know if that means incorporating more with Boys and Girls Club or keeping it through the Parks and Rec, but a lot of the players that are on traveling teams that travel all summer aren't going to participate. So our numbers are going to go down, but that doesn't mean that we need to cut back. My daughter traveled all the time. I know your kids probably do too. But there's still a different level of player that deserves the right to be able to go to our ball fields and play. And we need to keep those open and going as much as we can. We need to not just focus on the soccer leagues for the high school like we did with the soccer fields over there. We've got to have a big place. I mean, with the little leagues that want to have the different tournaments and come around, we've got to be inviting. That's part of our community too.
I absolutely agree. Her Director Smiley's question, I believe, was to the decrease in participation. What I was referring to is adult softball. We don't run youth baseball or softball, but I would agree we need to address that. I think it's one of your goals is to look at a recreation center, and a part of that discussion would be ball fields and how we increase those opportunities for our community to have adequate playing fields.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Karen.
as Director Burns said, we had the committee for the Sager Creek, and I think we should do a little bit more than what we've got here. $200,000 is not a lot to spend on what I consider one of our best assets that we have. There are very few communities, if any, that have that asset in the middle of their town that would draw people. And I don't think we spend a lot of money maintaining it. And there's a lot of attraction to that creek that we haven't even touched to bring it back to its original life. So I don't know where the money would come from, but I would like to see more spent in rehabbing that Sager Creek, because I think it's important.
I think the step would be is to work with a design consultant, because until we have a design, we don't know what the cost will be, and so we can proceed with that and then evaluate. Going back to the study, looking at the structural piece of it. If we don't spend that $200,000 or $250,000 as budgeted, what does that compromise? Maybe that needs to be done first to make sure we don't have an impact while we're going through the process of bringing in a firm. We're going through a design process that involves the community about what we want to see there.
For some reason, I thought we'd done a couple of designs on Sager Creek.
We've, I believe in the downtown master plan, there was some potential designs. I think in 2009, there was a firm, Appian, that was brought in and talked about it as well. A lot of those studies that this committee reviewed had some of those aesthetic things in it. And then when it came back to that list of priorities for the aesthetics, like for instance, the Upper Spring rehabilitation that's blocked off that we want to see. And then the Riverwalk piece of it, I believe that actually came from the downtown master plan. So you're absolutely correct. There's some things, but we would think as staff, when we get to that point, let the community come in and be a part of that design process to make sure we're not short-sighted, and but definitely lead with those recommendations that came from the committee.
Thank you. So my one question though is, are we just kind of doing a stopgap, Band-Aid type stabilization repair?
For that first step,
That's what it is.
I guess you can call it that, because a lot of, the maintenance recommendations, the water quality recommendation, and aesthetic recommendations, we didn't have a budget number for without a design process. So it would have been hard to put it in there. But from hearing from you tonight, that's important, so we can accelerate that process.
And I do understand water quality is important. It's very important, but maintaining Sager Creek, I think, is extremely important.
Yeah, and that water quality recommendations, if you recall, we talked about the fountains and what needed to be done there to help with the movement of water and aeration of the creek.
Thanks.
Yes, David.
Excuse me for being late into the meeting and coming in the middle of parks here. I may ask some questions that have already been asked. Dawn, on the bathrooms at Bob Henry Restoration, there has been discussion around the community about another bathroom further down near the dog park or the skate park. Has there been discussion with the Parks Advisory Committee?
No, sir.
Where do people go to the bathroom at Memorial Park? Do they go to the library?
There are, I believe, a total of 6 restrooms at Memorial Park. There's 4 up top and 2 at the bottom.
Where are they at the bottom?
So at the bottom on the back side of the amphitheater.
Oh, okay, all right.
They're kind of on the side.
I didn't know if that was a separate place. I wanted to make sure, though, people can go upstairs to the library. It is always open, right? for the
Well,
bath-
when it's open, absolutely, they can use the library as well.
And then at the City Park Community Building?
City Park, so what we have is when we did remodel Fire Station 2, we provided public restrooms on the rear backside of that facing the creek.
Yeah, I'm not sure everybody knows that. We might need to make sure that people know that, whether it's a city website or whatever. I was just saying, I have heard people bring up, has the city considered another bathroom unit near the dog park because of the length of walking to go from the dog and skate park all the way down near where it is now. So I just didn't know if it had been, I mean, I've just heard it. I didn't know if you guys had heard it or talked about it, so.
No, sir, but we can make note of that and bring it up with the Parks Advisory Board.
The other thing is on the Christmas decor, has that been spent? Is that the Christmas decor for downtown?
For this year?
Has that been done?
No, sir.
Okay.
We're working with Electric Department to make sure I believe the intent was to replace some of those, I don't know the technical term, that spans across
Yeah, I've had a
downtown.
lot of people say we
Yep.
need to do that, and,
Mhm.
and I didn't know if it had already been ordered or planned for this year, or if it's a future thing or what. So,
We're working on it for this
Okay.
year.
and then the RTP Dogwood Springs Trail, what is that, RTP?
Recreational Trails Program. So those are the grants that we typically bring and ask for, like an 80-10 or 80-20 or 90-10.
Okay, is that gonna go anything specific? I mean, any part of the trail, or is it to make new trail, or what is?
It's to repair.
110,000 and 55 for next year, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it's to repair the trail that's around the ball field. There's a certain section that's close to the creek.
Oh, I remember, yep.
Yep. Because
I
of-
do recall that now.
Yeah,
Yep.
losing bank is starting to compromise itself, so we want to fix it.
And then lastly, I want to echo what the other board members have said. Brad, you've been head of the Sager Creek Committee. Have we gotten a report? I don't know. I didn't know if for it to be in here for $250,000 to be spent, I thought we were going to get a report as to what the committee recommended. Have we gotten a report?
Yes, sir, we brought
Okay.
it in a board workshop this past summer.
I may not have made it, sorry. Okay. I agree, that's not enough money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So again, from what we heard, we can look at taking a different approach to it, and
that 50,000 for the dam, it's not gonna, you're not gonna get much for $50,000, so. And that dam needs to be done right for the next 100 years, so.
I think a lot of that money was towards the sluice gates and what needs to be fixed there to prevent the leaking.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Philip.
Don, can you let's walk back through all those projects from the committee again, okay? So we had the rock wall, the bluff,
So yes, the rock overhang.
rock overhang, that's part of this stabilization, right? The overhanging rock.
Yes.
And then the repairing of the dam, you just spoke to that. It's really the sluice gates to stop the leaking.
Correct.
Right? And then, it was mentioned earlier, there's also the Maxwell Wall, and I agree that we've got to get the trees from growing out of it and the brush from growing out of it. was that part of that, the next step?
That's in the maintenance. Part of our hesitation to removing trees is because the root system, we believe, and the structural engineer believe, is holding up part of the wall. So that needs to be evaluated before we go and just start removing trees, and then it really does compromise the wall. So yes, that was part of it.
But if we funded these two, if we funded these two to $250,000 and it is under budget, if we come back, we would come back in 2023 with a proposal, a contract, whatever it is, and a proposal to amend the budget accordingly to make it work, whether it's 250, whether it's $500,000 or $400,000, that's what we would be. But that number was our best guess based on the structural engineer or the consultant that we used to do that study, correct?
Correct.
I recall this now that you bring up all these different, I recall this, but I didn't know where we presented with actual numbers of what it would cost. That's what,
I think it was an estimate on the first two.
okay.
The estimate of the wall was, of the Maxwell wall, I don't think was
Because
there.
I think if we were told the numbers in the workshop, I think we would have all said, that's not enough.
Yeah.
So that's why I was questioning if the 250 was presented to us, because I don't recall it. I do recall the details of what the committee had said, this needs to be, and actually, I think the wall, what do you call it, Maxwell Street, I think that's far more important than the dam. I mean, the dam's important, but that wall's not gonna, it may not be another year. It may not be here in 24. I think you could put the dam off to 24. I don't think you can put the wall. Because it's up with gum and tape right now.
And I'd be happy to go back and look. If I remember right, and Director Burns is gonna correct me as soon as I say this, okay? Because he was on the committee and I wasn't,
Good.
so, yeah. Be prepared. The committee had sort of a step-by-step procedure. These were the top priorities, being the overhanging bluff.
Right.
And the repairs to the dam. Those were their top priorities. And then the wall, and then the water quality, the irrigation, and getting all those
Fountains.
sprinklers to a single pump, if I remember right. And then it was the aesthetics, the river walk, and that's part of where Don keeps saying, at least on the river walk, we've got to have more public input to design that,
Oh,
right?
of course, yeah.
And I don't disagree with Director Burns at all. The Main Street Bridge is important, and we've got to, if we design that, we've got to look at how we get pedestrians there. I don't think we can take the money from the Main Street Bridge and just roll it over here, because that's street fund money, so that's got to stay in the street fund. We can at least make a note to accelerate and start talking to a structural engineer about the Maxwell wall, because I think that's the next piece. While if you want us to do as much of it next year as we can, I don't know that we can budget for it because we don't have numbers. We can put another $500,000 in here if that's the board's direction, and say Maxwell wall and sprinkler, the fountains, and we'll go from there and see what happens. But I think we've got to do that stabilization and that dam repair based on at least the committees. That was their first recommendation that we tackle. And clearly, all this needs to be done. It should have been done years ago. But I think we're trying to do it in a measured step process. But
Well-
if the board would like us to add more money to at least include the analysis, the engineering analysis of the wall, of the Main Street wall, I think next year we can take that and amend the budget accordingly, or when it gets to the point of adopting the budget, you can amend it on the fly to include that. But I just don't, I wanted to try to boil it back because I felt like we're wanting to go all the way to the boardwalk design, which we're not ready to do that yet.
But I agree with Director Smiley. The thing that Siloam has that's so unique is Sager
Amen.
Creek.
Absolutely.
It's always been the center point of the town, and I don't want us to be working on the dam and suddenly that entire tree and everything caves in on that wall, and we say, what are we doing? I mean, the dam's not gonna cave in. The dam's gonna still be there. Brad, if you had to do it, would you say the wall is priority?
I understand.
I mean, I
where
wasn't on the committee, so I don't know what you guys
No,
investigated.
I understand
but-
where staff is coming from because we painted their mind with a big picture. But I think it is time to step back in this particular budget And remember that this started several years ago as a grassroots movement, has now made it to this point right here. And it's kind of like East Main street design. It became big, it's gonna get small. People just wanna make it look like we care. And so right now, going into 23, if we're gonna drain this creek again, what we can get for a I think it needs to be a minimum of $500,000 going into 23, is stabilization of that bank. And if you go to the north, or to the north of the walkway, not the large tree by the north gazebo, because that's the big tree that has to be removed. That's the very large tree. We're talking if you go past there where it goes, starts curve and hits Maxwell, if you look at that right now, and you go down and get your picture taken by the hay, and everybody I saw this weekend, all these families having a good time, and you walk over and that wall looks like poverty.
Yep, it does.
It's not a reflection, and that is a 23, remove the trees, nip and tuck, tidy it up, make it look like we care, and then you're going on to the big picture design, because you're not gonna get fountains. Fountains are all, because the fountain thing is dynamic to what the design is.
Right.
Yeah, I just recall, and it's in the budget this year for the Maxwell Street sewer project.
Right.
And so we needed to, because again, once that's done, that would abandon that sewer line that runs underneath the bridge and allow us to focus on that. You're correct, and there's going to be some street work that needs to be done on Maxwell for that project. We wanted to let that take place because that's the same place where the gap between the sidewalk and the street is happening. So that was part of the plan, and if I'm not mistaken, that's supposed to be done in this year's budget in 22. And that happening will assist with us understanding what we need to do with the bridge.
So the
before we
sewer
address the wall.
project has to be done before the wall gets
Yeah,
in.
because the bridge would then need to be replaced, and the
Okay.
bridge right now, the sewer runs underneath the pedestrian
okay.
bridge, and once that's abandoned, then we can address it all.
So,
Well, I think this is why we do have reserves. If we can't find it somewhere else in the budget, this is when you say, all right, let's take 200,000 or 250,000 out of the reserves, because this is not stuff that can just sit for another couple of years. And this is something, Brad's right, this has been talked about since James Fuller was on the board. This was his pet thing, we've got to clean up Sager Creek. And so I understand the fountains are important, and the dams are important. But if you have an entire section of the creek cave in, it's just like we're going to be picking up the pieces like a puzzle. And I just don't want to be going backwards. So I would rather us go ahead and find the money to do more this next budget year.
Thank you, David. Philip?
so, what we will do, and Director Burns, I want to ask you a question, and I know we're coming right up on 6:30. You came up with the 500,000. Would you say that the 500,000 number? I want to make sure if you were just saying the two projects that are already in the budget for 500,000, or we put $500,000 in the budget and we say that's for the stabilization of the rock overhang, the dam repair, and the nip and tuck on the wall.
I think that's a safe number, because I'm gonna ask for a budget amendment that's much larger. So
I know
don't
you
wanna get
are,
greedy.
and I know you are, and you're going to concern me when you do that, but we'll talk about that later. My point is, when we present the final budget to you, we won't make this change just yet. We'll leave this here, but we will present it with an option to amend the budget to add $250,000 to this for we'll amend it to say Sager Creek, and we'll say rock overhang, dam repair, and nip and tuck a wall for $500,000. We'll lump them all together, so it's not an individual project, if that makes sense. But we'll bring that when we ask you to approve the budget. We will say approve it, and you can approve it subject to that change, if that makes sense.
You may find out with 500,000 that with three major things like that one's 180 and 170, and so with 500,000 you could probably make it work.
Well, that's the goal, and we may find out that 500,000. We may find out that it's 750,000, right?
Right.
The way prices are increasing, but and just trying to I'm not trying to stop the discussion, but trying to figure out how to proceed from here is we will present the budget as is with some options for an amendment that you can do when the time comes to approve the budget, if that's okay, as related to this particular issue.
That's a, I would use the compare, I don't know what the repair was, when we had the wall collapse. But the problem with this kind of stone is there's not a bunch of humans out there that do that kind of work.
Amen.
They're hard to find.
Been 30,000.
It's an art, so I don't know what that cost will be, right? Because we're not rebuilding, but
And we'll be respectful to make sure whatever we're recommending and doing won't be compromised when we do the aesthetics piece, because we don't want to put something in and then rip half of it out.
thank
Madam
you, Dawn.
Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I know we're running out of time, but I'll need some clarity on the ball diamonds. Did you say that the Boys and Girls Club was going to take over? No? What did you say? Because I don't I'm not sure.
I was answering Director Sappington's question about travel ball and rec ball.
Okay.
And I pointed out that when in answering your question, talking about the decrease, it was talking about the participation at the adult level. And then I would anticipate at some point we will need to discuss with the board maybe how we approach youth sports.
I do know that I've had some parents come to me that are concerned about the fields themselves and the upkeep of the fields, and who is going to actually take responsibility for that.
Right. The baseball fields currently, through a lease with SSYB, are maintained by
Right.
them and not us. And so, but I would anticipate all that needing to be discussed in front of this board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, directors. Thank you, Christina and Don. And we will, I guess, have our next workshop at our next board meeting. Is that correct? Yes. All right. With that, this workshop is adjourned. Call to order this regular meeting of the Siloam Springs Board of Directors for October 18th, 2022. Roll call.
Sappington.
Here.
Smiley.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Rissler.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
At this time, I would ask that everyone please stand with me as Director Allen leads us in a word of prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here safely tonight as we look over and evaluate what is best for the best interests of all citizens of Siloam Springs. Look after everyone here tonight and our families. Look after our military around the world. Help our governments, federal, state, and local, to make best decisions. We ask these things in Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask that anyone that has an electronic device, please silence that so we don't have an interruption during our meeting. And thank you for that. Next is our public input time. Is there anyone here that would like to address the Board of Directors on any item that is not on our regular agenda? There is not. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board on any item that is on our consent agenda? There is not, so we will move on to our presentations. At this time, Christina will present our 2021 Independent Auditor's Report from the Landmark Certified Public Accountants. Christina?
Mayor, members of the board, Christina Patricis, Finance Director. This evening, Christopher Cluck, the Audit Manager, is here to go over the results of our 2021 Independent Audit Report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening.
And I'm sorry, sir, could you please give us your name again, please?
Christopher Cluck.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to kind of go over the highlights of the financial statements that was passed out to you earlier. To start off with, I'd like to start off on page 1, which is our Independent Auditor's Report. This is basically our report that gives our opinion and various other aspects of the audit. Starting off, the audit report is our opinion, which is an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion a government can receive. Basically, what that's telling you is that the financial statements in front of you are presented fairly in all material respects, based on the procedures we performed during the audit. It also goes through what management's responsibility is for the financial statements, the auditor's responsibilities for the financial statements, and then kind of details out the rest of the reports and things that are accompanying the financial statements. On page 4 of the your financial statements is our management discussion analysis. This is provided by management. It is basically a narrative review of the analysis of the activities for the year for the city and all its departments. On page 10 is our statement of net position. This statement goes through all your assets, liabilities, and net position for the various funds. At the end of 2021, your net position was $177.3 million. That was an increase of approximately $8.3 million, which was about a 4.9% increase from last year. On page 11, we have the statement of activities. Basically, this goes through and details out all your revenues and expenditures for the year. The change in net position was approximately $8.3 million. If you're in the business world, that was basically your net income for the year. It's basically your revenues less your expenditures for the year. So, starting on page 21 are the notes to the financial statements. What the notes do is give you more detail about the numbers that are on the actual statements themselves, that we feel like the users of the financial statements are interested in. Note 2 kind of details out the summary of your significant accounting policies. During the year, there weren't any new accounting policies from last year, so all the policies you had in place are still being followed. Note 5 to the financial statements kind of details out the city's fixed assets. The changes, disposals, additions, and so forth that occurred during the year. Note 6 there is your long-term debt, detailing out the payments and the proceeds that you had from your long-term debt. And then notes 10 and 11 kind of detail out your benefits plans that you have in place as it relates to not only your retirement plans, but the other post-employment benefits that you have in place. So starting on page 52 is where we start including some of the required supplemental schedules that are required by various government auditing standards in the state of Arkansas. Starting off there, you have your budget to actual for the general and the street funds, and then various other schedules as it relates to your retirement plans as well. So on page 62, we have another one of our audit reports as it relates to our testing of compliance with government auditing standards. During our testing, we didn't find any compliance issues as it relates to the government or the city's practices as it relates to the government auditing standards. And then on 64 is another audit report as it relates to your compliance with your federal funding. There's certain requirements that you have to comply with, and we're required to test your compliance with those requirements. As part of that, we prepare a schedule of expenditure of federal awards, and then we have to test major programs. The current year's major program was related to your capitalization, water and capitalization project that you guys have going on. And there we test your compliance with the requirements set forth by that agency, make sure that you're expending the funds correctly, make sure there's support for all your expenditures and so on and so forth. In that testing, we didn't find any compliance issues. Everything was in line with the requirements for that program. And then on the last page of the report is, on page 72 there is our audit report related to the city's compliance with state laws. There's certain laws that municipality is required to comply with, and we're, as auditors, are required to test to make sure that you're in compliance with all those laws. Happy to report that we didn't find any compliance issues. Everything was in good standing. So I did kind of go through that a little quickly, but I did want to open it up to the board if they had any questions, allow you an opportunity to ask those at this time.
Directors, do you have any questions of Mr. Clark? I guess not. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You bet. So next is our consent agenda. So item B, workshop minutes from October 4, 2022. Item C, regular meeting minutes, October 4, 2022. Item D, dedication of utility easements, 930 East Jefferson Street. Item E, dedication of utility easements, 1803 North Don Hill Road. Item F, grant acceptance, Walton Tree Initiative Grant, Parks and Recreation, for $79,532. That is our consent agenda. Directors, is there any item that you would like to have pulled for discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad.
can I pull item F, please?
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
do we need to pull the minutes to make a Scribner's error?
No, sir, I don't believe so. I believe we can just make note of that.
My last name misspelled 3 times. It's a tough name.
We can-
It's all right. I
we
just
will
want.
make, we will make note of that.
All right.
Thank you.
I didn't know what the procedure was.
This is in the regular minutes, is that right, Devin? Yes, okay. So with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with item F removed and the Scribner's error corrected in item C for the regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes?
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item F, the grant acceptance, Director Burns.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to point out, I brought this up in the past, the trees that are being donated and planted are gonna be at 2-inch caliper, which means within some of our lifespans, we'll actually get to see some significant growth out of them. And additional to that, they're watered for twice weekly for one full growing season. And if you've watched Parks and Recs, you know, they're busy watering, especially recently just because of the drought. But if you get a chance and you go anywhere in northwest Arkansas and the River Valley, and when you see this caliper a tree, and then you monitor that, the Great Dam Project's a nice one down in Little Rock, North Little Rock area to look at. It is significant, the contrast that brings on. And so I'm just excited about the facilities and our concern down at the kayak park, just putting more of this larger caliper tree on our trail system. And I just wanted to note my appreciation for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Marla.
I just wanted to double check with Dawn that the money that's going to be paid to have the maintenance of watering and taking care of the trees, was that in the contract labor that was also in the kayak park attendant, that 55,000?
No, ma'am, this is a separate initiative.
Okay, thank you. Well, when we had said that, I'm sorry, we had said that it was for the median, 412 median and taken care of during the workshop.
Yeah, so it was the 412 meeting and potentially Memorial Park.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve item F for the grant acceptance?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns,
Yes?
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is our ordinances. We have one ordinance, ordinance 22-24, second reading, amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from I-1 to C2, the 800 block of Highway 412 West. Don?
Yes, Don, thank you, Madam Mayor, Board. Don Clark, Community Development Director. This is the second reading for the Siloam Warehouse rezoning request. As a reminder, they are requesting to rezone the property from I-1 Industrial to C2 Commercial Roadway. Staff is still recommending approval, and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to ordinance 22-24? There is not. Directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just note, and this is a bit off topic, but it will come up, both corners of this property are going to have significant development. I just saw another Jiffy Trip. We may be the only Jiffy Trip town in Northwest Arkansas, but just a heads up, there is going to be another significant impact to 412 traffic.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? If not, then I would ask for a motion to place ordinance 22-24 on its second and third reading. The developer has asked for that, if you all are agreeable to that. This would be placing this on its second and third, suspending the rules and reading title only. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 22-24, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, City Zoning Map, rezoning from I-1 to C2, property located at 650 Highway 412 West.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 22-24?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Ordinance 22-24 is adopted. Next is our resolutions. Resolution 60-22, golf course improvements, Siloam Springs Country Club, $30,000. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. So at the last board meeting, the Siloam Springs Country Club president, Mr. Curtis Smith, briefed the board on the history of the country club, the golf course, and its current financial status. At that time, they discussed the intent of the Siloam Springs Country Club to hire a new management company, Maxim Golf, to take over the management of the golf course. And there was also discussion about a number of the improvements that were needed, and those improvements included irrigation improvements to the land, some equipment upgrades, and then also Maxim Golf's management fee, I think, was about $37,000, and the need to try to put half of that in the bank. That was one of their requirements, that amount be included. That all rounding up was to $120,000 that the golf course was trying to raise to be able to keep their operations, continue their operations. There was a meeting a month or so ago with the chamber, city staff, and a number of community leaders. And one of those community leaders, Simmons Foods, stepped up and said that they would provide a grant to the golf course of $30,000. Other community leaders were looking to see if the city would help the system also, help the golf course also, before they were considering willing to provide grant money or some other financial means to try to raise the $120,000. So based on that discussion from the last board meeting, what you have before you is a resolution that agrees to provide the club with $30,000, subject to them raising the other $90,000, and that $30,000 that the city has goes to maintenance and improvements to the golf course. As a reminder, the city owns the property, the city owns the land. And there is a lease to the Siloam Springs Country Club, basically a 99-year lease that we're into about 60 years. So there's 40 some odd years left on that lease. So generally the city cannot, just give money to an entity. In this case, I think from the perspective of City Attorney and I, Mr. Williams, trying to write the resolution from a standpoint to say that the money has to go to course improvements, land improvements. It doesn't go toward the spending for any equipment. It goes as an investment in the land, and that there would be a report every 90 days on how that money would be spent or how that money is spent, that report coming from the Siloam Springs Country Club. And Madam Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to Resolution 60-22? Thank you, sir. Please state your name and address in 3 minutes.
James McGuirk, 412 West University Street.
Thank you.
Since the last board meeting, I've spoken to a number of people across the city, not just in Ward 1. And 28 households I spoke to. And out of the 28, 26 does not want to give or bail out the golf course at all. And that's my feelings too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Curtis Smith, 218 South Wright Street. I would just like to thank the board for considering this and thinking about it. There are a lot of, today I've had a lot of good conversations with people. I had good conversations with the school district and the importance of golf to student athletes, introducing golf to players that haven't ever played before, and give these kids something athletically that they can do. It was an exciting conversation that I had with them. I know that we've got the right people in place. Brian with Maxim Golf is the right people to handle this, but we have to give them a little runway. We've got to be able to cure these infrastructure costs that have accrued over 60 years of time of managing the golf course for the city to provide public access to golf. I thank you guys for all of your consideration and appreciate it.
Thank you, Curtis. Is there anyone else? If not, directors, comments, questions? If there are none, I'll ask for a motion to approve Resolution 60-22.
Madam Mayor, may I ask one question?
Oh, yes, sir.
Kurt, can you answer? Your board of directors, would you guys consider having someone from the city sit on your board?
If you would require that, absolutely. We've got I've got several committees that I'm going to be setting up, and we could use the help. So, yes,
Just didn't know as a possible oversight.
If that's
of the money.
If that's something that the city wishes, we could address that. Absolutely.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
I would second David on that. I think that's a good one, and I've been beating this horse for a while, and so I'm gonna give my sales pitch publicly. It's been shot down this year, but I'm always optimistic at 23, 24, 26, and I appreciate the email that Lisa had sent to the city admin, just asking questions of pros and cons of a municipal course. And my observation over your struggles over the past several years is that I would see as a citizen, since we own the land, and especially looking out, 40 years, it seems like a ways away, but if you think of that next generation coming online, the golf course is a magnificent piece of land. It would be interesting to have the municipal golf course underneath Parks and Recs and ran exactly how you're speaking of now, much like the aquatic center, but we're not tying up city staff. and we're annually, you're accountable, and we've got a member that sits on that board, whether it be Dawn or Travis from whatever that would look like, and then the board could be directly asked questions to that, and it's answered specifically, and it creates a revenue fund, not for us, but that we don't have the continued eyesore that we have right now, and those revenues go directly back into that course. That's a big vision picture. I don't golf every day, but it is our headwaters. I have spent some time out there, and a lot of that is done. It's done for free, because I believe the headwaters of Sager Creek are vital. It's our lifeline. It used to be Buffalo Park. You can go through the whole history of what that land used to be. But the bottom line is now, I'm watching people going out there on some really nasty greens, and they're still playing golf. And a lot of them are retirees. It's what they enjoy doing. And they've been lifelong members out there. And I'm excited. I talked to you recently over a cup of tea, because, you know, I like to drink hot tea. And we've gotten some old members back, what we talked about in the workshop. And I believe that's going to come on board. We've lost Don Hill. That's gone. That's ancient history. And that 9-hole course, I would love to see the chamber have a 9-hole event there. Instead of going to the corridor, our public entities come back to Siloam. Because when you do event golfing, some of it's about the golfing, and the other is about the camaraderie and that sort of thing. There's a lot of business deals done on a golf course. And I think it's just that, it's kind of like Butts Field. It's just something that needs to be addressed. We're aware of it, and here we are today. And it's good seed money. We did it for Makerspace, and it's a fantastic space. People utilizing it. And it feels like the right thing to do. And if you fall through, then obviously we're at a different level, but I believe you'll be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I do believe in this, and we do own the land, and if we don't do something and it reverts back to us, we're going to spend a lot more money than this, taking care of it. So I think this is the solution. I think we all got a letter from the school system. The high school uses it. There's other surrounding schools that use it. My granddaughter plays on the Rogers High School golf team, and I know how important it is to her. So I am very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
I too have talked to several people over the last couple of weeks. I don't typically ask questions on social media. Today, I was able to put the
Mindy.
memo. I'm sorry. I was able to put the memo that Mr. Patterson sent us on Facebook and ask for some feedback. But I'd already talked to several people just through texting, conversations, things like that. Didn't get just a whole lot of response today, other than from someone indicating that he would. He sees this as a quality of life kind of benefit for Siloam. Another one did feel like we're in a recession, and this isn't a good time for the city to be contributing money toward a project. So I get that. Just, I'm going to read just some of the comments verbatim that I got. Concerns, and I'll read these. They're questions. Probably don't have answers at this point, but just sort of to mull over. What happens if the new management company doesn't turn a profit? That's a concern. Is there enough interest to support a course in Siloam? I think Brian with Maxim indicated there was, in his opinion, but that is a question to continue to consider. Comments for the golf course or contributing toward the golf course. Golf courses are a social good, and they attract and help keep other economic interests. If other businesses are behind the idea to support the course financially in an effort to save it, it's not unreasonable for the city to provide some of the financial support as well. This is from a retired school principal. As someone who used to play golf, I know that it continues to bring a lot of people pleasure. It should be in great shape, and the city should pledge $30,000 toward improving it. Those that had concerns, I already talked about the recession. One says it's probably reasonable for a city our size to have a course, but she would rather that 30,000 go elsewhere. Some of the people had some questions about the city managing the course, because I know that has come up as if why can't the city manage the course? Comments regarding that: if the city doesn't have the expertise to run a golf course, then it should be outsourced, and this is what you're suggesting. This is just comments that came from the public. And then one person just out and out said, I don't think the city should take over management, and that was not a city official that said that. Someone just kind of thinking over. So, if the city invests in the course, then I have in my notes here what Director Allen already said, Director Burns seconded, that I feel like the city should have a seat on the board. If I'm going to support this, I feel like that would just really be good for all parties involved. There's that accountability there, and I've talked to other people that are interested in being more involved in the board, and I can give you names of people. I know that First Tee over in Springdale is interested in some sort of partnership. The letter from the school district was very compelling as a reason to support this project. But I also just want to make sure you've said this, except that the word equipment is not in there. I do want to make sure that if the city contributes any money, that those funds are earmarked for land improvements only, not equipment, not management consulting fees or management fees. Land improvements only, because that land is owned by the city. The value of those improvements will continue whether the golf course continues or not. So it may be implied, I just didn't see the words equipment as something that the money would not go toward. So if we can add that to the resolution, or if it's already obvious, that's where I am.
Thank you, Minnie. Philip?
Well, the
Can you address that?
way the resolution reads is that $30,000 for site maintenance, and you have a revised one that says modernization, because the original one said something different, and improvement. So if you wanted to just keep, you could amend the resolution to say site improvements, physical improvements. It was the way Mr. Williams and I tried to write this resolution was to make sure that it was going to the site, the physical improvements to the site, not to equipment, not to management fees. And obviously there's a requirement, as I stated earlier, that the golf course shall prepare and provide periodic reports detailing how the appropriated funds were utilized at intervals not exceeding 90 days, commencing upon the expenditure of the funds from the city, so that there is a very clear-cut process of knowing exactly how those funds got expended. As it relates to, and a couple of you and I have had discussions about the issue of being on the board, one of the issues that I thought about later this afternoon, which I think is a valuable option, but I think if you make that as a motion, I would ask that somehow we give an out, only because I believe it's a nonprofit organization, correct? The organization has a debt to a bank, has an outstanding debt. And if that bank ever calls that, I don't know if members of the board are liable for that debt. So if you put a city employee on there, whether it be myself or a city administrator's designee or something, I don't want to have that individual be liable for a portion of that debt. So I think it's a good idea to try to have something like that, but I would want city attorney and I to spend some time looking at the particulars of that loan and how that's addressed, because there are times when, you're on a board and there's a debt, you're liable for that. So I don't know how to word that one yet, but it came up late this afternoon that there is that potential. If they go after, if the bank called the note and they went after just the equipment and the building and those type things, that's one thing. If the bank called the note and they go after the individuals on the board, that's another thing. And not only might it put that individual at risk, it might put the city at risk. And I would just want to make sure that we've got that squared away before we formally put somebody on the board, if that makes sense. So
I think you could have an advisory seat instead of an actual board member.
Yeah, it would. I mean, you could be a ex officio member, but you generally don't have a vote at that point, but you could be an advisor, yes.
And that's really the only reason we're wanting someone, is to keep an eye on what's actually going on.
And I think if you worded the motion like that, either on the board or an ex officio member, you know, that gives at least open for us to look at it, and if it's clear that the bank would go after the contents, then maybe we become a board member. If not, if there's something, then it's an ex officio member of the board. Thank you.
I had just a couple other comments, actually a couple of clarifications. One, I believe in your presentation a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that your membership has increased since COVID.
Yes.
Okay. So the issues you're currently seeing aren't necessarily related to COVID. COVID actually helped increase. Maybe it wasn't COVID that increased it, but naturally people were outside a lot. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
During COVID, we had an uptick. Most of golf did have an uptick.
Okay.
Because it was one of the few things you could do outside that could social distance.
Right. Okay. I guess I don't see this as a bailout as much, because you all are a nonprofit, and any paid management firm that you've used is no longer with you. We're not bailing out a company. We're contributing toward a quality of life.
Get the infrastructure up on the course is what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Lisa?
This one's been a little hard for me, because whenever you first did the presentation, I was excited, because I do like the idea of having a golf course here in Siloam Springs. But when I have citizens contacting me, I do have to take into consideration anything they say, and I have to do my research and my due diligence to make sure that I'm representing them as well. So I love that Simmons is given. That shows a sign of support from the community. One of the things you mentioned was the school. They use it, and so I personally contacted some members of the school board and said, hey, what investment are you putting into this? You're asking the city to put an investment in. What's the city going to? And so one of the board directors said that, one of the school board's members said that he was going to have further discussion with the school board and see what that they could do, because I do think if they're going to use it, they should invest in it. So one thing it was brought up, and I'm going to give you a little history. So about 10, 11, 12 years ago, David was the city administrator. Sorry, I'm trying to focus on my. And he asked me to serve on a committee, and it was for the Dawn Hill Committee. And it was to decide, do we want to buy Dawn Hill? I don't know if anybody remembers that, but so when we were on this committee, we were looking at the pros and cons. Why do we even have to look at Dawn Hill? And they said that we were going to lose that 9th hole due to that street overpass that they were going to put in. Contacted the state said, no, it's a park, you can't do that. And so during part of that, being on that committee, one of the things we discovered is a lot of money that the city was pouring into the golf course, the city golf course. And one of the things, and I didn't hear it mentioned ever, and I had to make some phone calls to make sure I was correct, because I did used to be a city employee. And we had a deal with the city golf course that we wrote off $10,000 for the first part of the year. Do you know what I'm talking about, Philip?
No.
For 3 years, equaling $30,000. And so that was about 10 years ago. And then we've done some other things that I can't even remember all the details of everything that was mentioned. And I think that's where my concern is that we have been pouring money into the city golf course as much as I want it. And I really hope that the community steps up and makes this happen, because it should happen. I really believe in the city golf course. If it was my money, would I reinvest? That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at, where the citizens reminded me, and where I served on that committee, and I knew the history of our write-offs for the utilities and our the 3-year agreement that we had, that we wrote off $30,000. And now you're coming back and asking for another 30,000, and it wasn't you guys personally. I know it wasn't you guys personally. Had nothing to do with you guys. But in my position, am I doing my due diligence for the citizens? If it was my money, would I put my money back into that? And so I do have to ask, if we put that 30,000 into the property, what does it do for the property if they go under? So so when we were studying the Don Hill, and we were talking about the reason we did not purchase the Don Hill is because of the foundations and stuff that you have to lay under a golf course to make a golf course work. Once you lay that foundation, what does it do for the city if they fail? And I'm hoping you don't fail. I'm praying you don't fail. What does it do for the city?
I think the only answer that I could tell you would be if it does fail and the $30,000 goes into the irrigation system and, you know, the fertilizer for the greens and that sort of thing, is you have a functioning golf course at that time. If the city decides to take it over and continue to operate a golf course, you've got a functional golf course. If the city were to take it over and say, I don't turn it into something else, then I can't say that it's providing, I mean, the irrigation's there depending on what you turn it into.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it would be a functioning irrigation system for that property.
Okay. And did it go to vote, the Don Hill? Do you remember, David? Did it go to vote for the Don Hill? Did they ever?
It went to a public vote to not buy Don Hill, but to annex Don Hill
Only to
and
annex.
the property, the homeowners, and all the residents, the neighborhoods, everything. And it might have passed if our city staff and planning had not gone past it into Taylor Orchard Road and where people didn't want to be. So if we'd gone right along Don Hill, it might have passed. But
Was they going to take
then
over?
we might be in a big mess having Don Hill in the city limits right now, the way it looks. So,
Utilities.
yeah. There
Was they
was
gonna
never a
take over the
public
golf
vote
course
to
at that
buy
time?
Don Hill. There was never a public vote to buy Don Hill that I know of.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so, but you are right. It was looked at annexation, and part of the problem with annexation was that once we annexed them, we had streets that we had to upgrade all through that area. There were septic lines under the golf cart paths. There was already EPA looking at the problems they were having, which became our problems if that happened. So, yeah, it did not.
It was discussed as a city board to
Yeah.
buy Don Hill because the price was so cheap. The owner wanted to get out of it. And for the land value alone, it may have been worth it, but it was one of those things of, what do we do with it once we got it? So we didn't do it.
Do you know of any money that the city has, besides the 3 years that I'm pretty familiar with that.
I'm not aware of that one. That's the first I've heard of that.
So we don't know of any other money that has been.
The only
given
thing
to it?
that, since my tenure in 2015, the only thing that, to my knowledge, we've done is we've amended the lease agreement to allow the golf course to sell alcohol. That was done, I think, in 2018, somewhere along in there. But there's not been any financial support since I was hired as a city administrator for the golf course, to my knowledge.
2015.
Yes, yeah.
So if I vote no, it's not because I don't care about the golf course, and I'll do everything I can to support the golf course. I'm sorry. But I do feel like I owe it to the citizens. And I'm okay if we table it and say, hey, let's look at the history and how much money we contributed. And let's see if I do have an obligation to the citizens to know how much money that we've poured into a certain organization, whether it be the Mana Center, the Boys and Girls Club, or the city golf course, even if I support them personally. So, I don't know if the other directors care about that information, want that information, but
Madam Mayor, that's a lot of information to present in a short amount. If we need to table it to look at it, I am in favor of tabling it. I was not aware. I've asked the question myself, and I know that Philip is not aware of any.
Right. And neither, I know you guys aren't, because you weren't here. I mean, you weren't at the golf course at that time.
Can I
So-
confirm what you're talking about? I've talked to a former employee who was in charge of that over 10 years ago, and it was a writing off of electric.
So it had to be coded in the system.
$10,000 the first year, $8,000 the second year, and I believe $5,000 the third year.
I thought it was 310s.
So
but
it was around 25,000 over 3 years that the city did not give cash, but
Right.
wrote off.
Mhm.
That was at least 10 years ago.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I do remember that the city wrote off some electric or some utilities. I can't tell you how much. It wasn't a lot, but I do remember them coming and wanting some help with the utilities.
Madam Mayor,
Yes. Marla.
thank you. I'm not one to go back in the past and try to dig up history, because I'm sure that bad debt is around in many organizations that had to be canceled through a parent board or something. And I see that we have the opportunity to go forward the way we need to go forward, doing the improvements like we need to do, investing in the future of our children in the community, having a place for the retirees. I don't like our Chamber of Commerce going somewhere else. That's a slap in the face, and then they want to ask for funding. I would much rather see the funding we give them go to the golf course if we have a hard time finding it somewhere. But I'm all for this. I think I have never picked a golf club up in my life, but my grandkids like to do that. My grandson would eat this up. And if it means he's going to come spend a weekend with me and invite me out there, I'm going to go. So I'm all for this. And I said, our amenities in our city are our draw. And if we don't take care of those, shame on us. And this is the headwaters, right, Brad? So I'm for it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I don't think it serves any purpose to look at what the city has done in the past. This is a management company that's coming in first and fresh. I think we should look at this as an economic development choice, an opportunity. I think that there are corporations here, there are businesses here that feels that this helps bring their recruiting for employees, because employees like to play golf. They're looking for some place to do quality of life for their families when they settle here. I have no problem with this. I don't think it's any different than supporting an aquatic center or any other quality of life event for our city and for our citizens. Not everybody goes to the swimming pool. Not everybody goes out to the kayak park. Not everybody golfs. Everybody has their own certain thing that they like to do. And I would like to support our corporate community and our citizens. I know a lot of citizens that just play for the fun. And they don't want to drive to Fayetteville, they don't want to drive to Rogers, they don't want to go out to Flint Ridge and play. They want to play in Siloam Springs, and I support this.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, David.
Respectfully, the Family Aquatic Center and the Kayak Park are owned and maintained by the city, and the Siloam Springs Country Club has never been. It is a separate entity. I'm going to give pluses and minuses here based upon my research. I will say, Kurt, the info that our administrator emailed us would have been nice to have a hard copy. It would have been nice to have the pro forma financials that we got today. It would have been nice to have the list of officers. And so I have read the contracts going back to this property going from city for a 99-year lease in 1963. And it is interesting to know that there is a loan to the bank, and as our administrator said, it'd be a question of if the bank came back and wanted the buildings. The previous contracts in 63 and 67 actually had the city put the money up to build those buildings. So it's a question, of course, is who actually owns the buildings. I guess because they're part of the property, they would be leaseholder improvements if anything ever caved back to the city. I am a big supporter of golf in general for our city. I've never been good at it, but I love to play. I usually shoot a 72, and then I go on to the second hole. But I remember how bad it was in this city when Don Hill failed, and it hurt the entire city through change of ownership several times, bad management, etc. And not to make any corrections, but the reason you're in the place you are is because you did have a management company. Am I correct? Somebody who didn't do a very good job is what I understand. Because I've talked to people with the rodeo, and the driving range is over on the rodeo property, and payments were supposed to be made, and they never got payment. But then it sounded like there was a lot of poor decision making on the part of that previous management company. And my only concern now, I mean, as Director Patterson or Administrator Patterson has said, is if Maxim can't do it, nobody can do it. You're getting the best option to take a bet that they're going to be able to pull it out. But I don't want to see poor oversight by the club members as it was done with the previous management company. Because I think if the club members had been paying more attention, that management company might not have been able to make the mistakes that they did. And I will say flat out, I have been back and forth on this. I have lots of business and Baker friends who use the golf course. I hate seeing the greens in the condition they are in. The redeeming factor is that any property development, any development of the ground itself or the greens would retain with the ownership of the city because we own the land. The thing that really, really, really concerns me is if this failed, if it did not succeed, even after you got the 120,000, even if you put the years into it, Maxim did everything they could, even if it failed, what the city would have to spend just to keep that thing maintained as a park, just to keep it with nothing going on it except, I mean, we're not going to let it turn into a hayfield. So just the simple maintenance, you're going to be spending a whole lot more than $30,000 a year if it's set unused. And so, therefore, I come back to, is $30,000 a very cheap way of us getting through this? Because I don't like this. I don't like it at all. The main thing I don't like is that we have a lot of struggling nonprofits, like the History Museum, never received an increase in funding since they've been around. The Siloam Springs Rodeo, great nonprofit, has been jacked around by the city for 20 plus years. But yet, we don't go and raise the money to lift them up. And I mean, the rodeo right now is hurting for new stands. We have said we were going to build a new arena. We never did. If the arena ever did get built, You could put another 9 holes where the rodeo is. I mean, wouldn't that be great to have an 18-hole golf course? Because I know everybody hates to play the same 9 twice. I know it. But it is true the city did help 10 years ago. I don't want to see us always being the savior of the golf course, especially when you go back and read the original contracts and the detail of what responsibility lay with whom. But I think as you guys had been working through this, I think it would have helped a lot better, at least for me, to be able to have seen these financials earlier. So I'm not against this as much as I have been concerned for the future. And with Mr. Patterson having written this with a stopgap protective measure, that the only way this $30,000 from the city will come to you is after you raise the full $120,000. So the city is not going to be stuck with Simmons for $30,000 each, and you guys say, well, we did all we could do, sorry, we spent your 60. If you guys can't go out and get the other 60 from corporations or individuals or wherever, who knows? We have relied on the Walton Family Foundation for everything. Maybe they want to put something in. Who knows? But there is that protective measure within this resolution. And that is the only thing that is making me consider this right now. Because I can tell you, I do not like constantly being looked at as a bank. But I don't want the city to not have a golf course. I don't want another scab like Don Hill has become. I mean, yeah, people use it for trails and walking, but it's certainly not what it was meant to be. And I don't want the Siloam Springs Country Club to become that. So, you know, if you can guarantee me, you know, I can bring that down to like 70 on the first hole, then maybe I appreciate you guys doing all the work you've done, because I know you have put a lot of time into it, and I know you have gone around to businesses and said, please, what do we do? But I just want to stress, the club members have to stay on it. And I think Maxim could do a good job, but I think you guys have got to keep your finger on all of it.
Madam Mayor.
Make the members abide by the rules.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, just a moment. Lisa?
I have a question, but before I ask it, there was a gentleman that wanted to, can I hear what he had to say, or no?
We've actually passed public comment time.
So we're not allowed to hear what they say, even if we ask? Okay.
Can we move that we hear from the public and decide that as a board?
Well, you've really actually already done that by what you have set as your guidelines for your meeting.
Because sometimes we talk about it, and then they have some insight that we don't have after, because they say their piece, and then we say what we have to say.
We don't actually have guidelines in our board rules that it has to be the audience first.
Well, I won't argue with you about that, David, because you are a director. So it is your meeting. And if that's what you all choose to do, you may certainly do that. So is that what you want to do?
I do.
Okay. Then they may come forward. They have 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Andrew Fletcher. I live on Deerfield Meadow, 903 Deerfield. I moved into Siloam as a retired military individual. I love the town. My wife is from here, family are from here. I see what the golf course needs, and it is owned by the town, correct? It owns the golf course.
It owns the land.
The land.
Right. Different from Don Hill.
Yes.
Yes. So really it is part of the town, and for that reason I think you should separate the condition of Don Hill with what the golf course is and could become with a little bit of help, not a bailout. course needs help. I volunteered a lot of time, my own time and money, to seeing the golf course work. And if that isn't a true to the heart statement from a local citizen, nothing is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for moving to Siloam.
Yeah. Can I,
Madam Mayor.
I have my question.
Yeah. Just a moment. Carol. Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
So I was asked by a citizen, and I don't know the answer to this. Are you gonna keep your same board, or is there gonna be a new board?
We have elections every year. Each term is a 3-year term.
Are they staggered?
Yes.
Okay.
So when would your next board member come up?
It's December, or we're November 1. We'll start taking names. January 1 is whenever the elections will be
And
tabulated.
how many seats would that be?
We have 2 seats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mindy.
The information that Director Rissler shared, it is a concern, and it's a concern that we don't have more information about that. I did appreciate what Director Sappington said about it's not always about dragging up the past. I think those currently interested in it, in seeing the course succeed, we're not part of that. It sounds like we're not part of that history. I understand, even those citizens that I talked to who generally were good with a course, but with the contribution, but had concerns, cautiously supportive of it. But I understand there were others that had concerns. We got one email as a board. We have a email. You email board@siloamsprings.com, and that goes to all of the board members. We encourage people to come to meetings. We got one email, and it was very compelling for helping. So when there are concerns, I really encourage citizens to let us know through email or through attendance at the meetings. I know social media is a popular venue, but it doesn't reach everybody. So,
Thank you. Carol.
Well, I think we could debate this on and on. And I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 60-22.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 60-22. Roll call.
Allen.
Yes.
Excuse me, Carroll.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
yes.
Rissler.
No.
Motion is approved. Next is resolution 61-22, the 2023 compensation plan. Misty?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
last year we tabled this until we approved the budget, and I would like to make a motion that we do the same.
Certainly.
Because it is connected directly
Yes,
with
it
our
is.
budget.
So do I have a motion to table this resolution until after we have looked at the compensation?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Carroll.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes, it was actually on the same meeting that we
Same meeting.
approved the budget. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So would you like to wait until we are getting ready to approve the budget before we look at the compensation plan? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, we have the info.
Right.
I think that we,
We-
a year ago, we
Mhm.
had it on the same meeting as the final budget approval. So it doesn't mean we can't discuss it.
Sure.
I'm just saying I'd rather the vote be the same night as the budget, in case we have changes in the budget related to this.
Okay. So if we have tabled this, then are we tabling it until later in the meeting whenever we have the employee benefits comparison study, perhaps? And then bring it back and open it up for discussion? or are we tabling it until our budget meeting?
I don't know.
Philip?
Well,
I opened the can of worms. And
yes,
I
you
don't
did,
know.
and I'm really afraid to answer, okay? What I heard was you're tabling this until the meeting when the budget is on the agenda for approval.
Right.
So that you can compare, at least consider the budget and consider the compensation plan, the 2023 compensation plan at the same time.
Well, between now and the final budget approval, we
Yes,
may adjust this as well. Yeah.
Understood. But that's the table that I understood that just got approved 7-0.
Okay.
But what you're asking, Mayor, is do we discuss it at the next meeting or what, or discuss it the night of?
I would say that we discuss
Okay.
it at that time,
Okay.
whenever, yes.
Okay.
And that is what we have voted on. Everyone is, right. All right. So then we will move on to contracts. Contract for Highway 412 Median Improvement Phase 1, Olkey Construction Company for $309,957.73. Don?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 1 second here. Okay. In the board goals of 2017, 2018, the board of directors had a goal directive for staff to develop a plan to replace Highway 412 grass median with landscaping, which included trees, shrubs, flower beds, and decorative hardscape. In 2019, the board voted to accept a grant from the Walton Family Foundation for these improvements. The total for that grant was $263,000. Complications and scope of work have delayed the project, which in 2019 included an estimate around $1.3 million. Staff worked diligently to come up with solutions and to value engineer the project, making the following amendments. We removed irrigation, reduced the concrete border from 3 feet to 2 feet, removed mulch, removed decorative grasses, and making a decision to leave the median unchanged between the plantings of the trees. So it also included that we remove the weed barrier and matting. Those amended plans were presented to the board at a workshop on May 18th, 2021, along with the approach to complete the project in 3 phases. And then also applying that grant that was funded by the Walton Family Foundation to those 3 phases. Phase 1 of the plan will run from State Line Road to Dogwood. We'll add shrubs, trees, and the 2-foot concrete border along the median, which will act as a buffer in an attempt to make it safer to maintain the median. So I'll direct your attention to the slides just to run through them. So what we will be doing is the 2-foot dyed stamped concrete border. I'll also point out that the toe or nose, whichever way you want to call it, of the intersection will also be the stamped concrete going back to 6 foot. This would include 12 fragrant sumacs, which is a shrub, 17 kingpin willow oak trees, 17 black gum trees, and the spacing of those trees is approximately 50 feet. So this is the section that we're discussing tonight. And point out here, again, the nose of the intersection, if you will, is where the, up to the point to where the stamped concrete will stop and the median grass will start up, and then you have the 2-foot borders on either side. Staff advertised bids for this phase of the construction in the local paper, on the city's website, on a state's bid website as well. 3 bids were received, one from Olkey Construction for the amount of $309,957.73, one from Midland Industrial Services for $541,689.35, one from Diamond C Construction for $715,637.52. Staff reviewed the bid proposals and recommends entering a contract with Olkey Construction for the Highway 412 median improvement Phase 1 in the amount of $309,957.73. Phase 1 was allocated $262,708 in the 2022 budget. The amount exceeding the budget would come from reserves through a budget amendment, should you approve this, in the amount of $47,249.73. Again, this includes 1/3 of the Walton Family Foundation grant, or $87,666.67 to be allocated to phase 1. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Don. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the contract for Highway 412 median improvements? There is not. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, David.
I am disappointed, to say the least, that this has taken this long for a board goal of 2017, of which over half this board of directors was not even here in 2017. The fact that we're just now getting to it, I question, is this even still a board goal? The fact that we've either forgotten about this and been reminded by Walton or whatever, it reminds me of the Hyco side path being 3 to 4 times what it was because of our delays. This is only 1/3 of this project, and it's $300,000. You can see the highest bid was $700,000. So that tells me the other 2/3 are at least going to be $600,000, if not higher, because of inflation. I think these trees are going to be a driver hazard. It is not like our median is 20, 25 foot wide where you would put decorative landscaping. It is a very narrow median, and cars are right next to it as it is. I think these trees within 10 years are going to be, if not sooner, a major driver hazard, and I'm not in favor of this at all. I may have thought it looked nice whenever we had a workshop, but realizing that this is $1 million long-term project to the citizens, $1 million out of pocket, of which only $263 is coming from Walton Family Foundation, $263,000 with $1 million. I think your citizens would scream and yell and say, you better put that money into our streets rather than more beautification on a interstate highway. It's going to be interstate. So I'm completely against this.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I would consider this not only beautification, but it's safety of our workers that have to mow that area. Because when I've driven down that street and the mowing is going on, we have to, we put up cones, we do all kinds of things to protect those employees that are mowing that median.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
is it our employees or are we contracting the mowing?
Currently, it's our employees.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
have we had
Wasn't
any
done.
employees have any incidents on the highway?
We've had some close calls.
But we haven't had any reported that. Has anybody been injured? It's,
No, luckily, no.
okay.
We're not going to spend money or have people trimming shrubs or trimming trees or anything else after this goes up? Of course we will.
Yes, good question. As a part of this grant, and I'll speak to the delays as part of this as well. So it was a 2017, 2018 board goal. Part of that time period took design, also took us coordinating with the highway department to get a list of trees that they would approve on the highway. Also included us to try to work with a construction manager to come up with associated costs, which took us back to the $1.3 million. And us the understanding that was a little too high, and coming to this board and asking if we can value engineer it and bringing it here. We also designed this in-house and had to keep up with the current workflow while designing this. So when it comes to the trees, maintenance after, it's our understanding that, again, the 2-foot border will reduce the time that we're up against the edge of the curve and having to do the handwork. That's where most of our close calls have happened. This would now put the employee inside the median. We still have to close off the inside lane, but hopefully, again, it reduces our amount of time that we're out there and their time being exposed to it. Currently, it takes the entire crew to go and do this, and it takes us roughly about 6 hours. So we're trying to improve efficiency in every which way we can. And again, this was a board goal. It's your pleasure.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So I've been asked these questions, and I can't answer them. And I sent some questions that you guys have answered to Philip that I had to go back and look. A lot of people are saying, how are these not a safety concern? Like, are the types of trees that you picked and stuff, they don't have the fall and stuff that other trees that branch out over the road do.
Right.
Why did you pick these particular trees?
So the trees, these were recommended by arborists as well as the highway department because their canopies can be trimmed and grow up instead of out, was the reason for that.
Okay. And the roots go down instead of across and tearing up the highway.
Oh, correct.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this is my cup of tea. I could read about these things all the time, and I've learned a lot reading. I was worried at first that with the willow, you're not going to have the base that you need for the roots to take into the soil because, I mean, basically, if you try to dig a post hole there, it's going to be red rock.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sustainability is a concern for me. But I saw that you did pick some good ones. I looked up the arborist. I, did my research on it because, like I said, I enjoy this. This is what I like. But I still do have the concern of traffic and heat exhaust from traffic affecting the growth. And it is an awful lot of money. And right now, I'm straddling the fence on this. I could go either way. I feel like it would be nice to have, but is it needed? I understand the safety, but, all it takes, we've got lots of trucks. If we have to park 2 on one side of the median and 2 on the other and create our own work area for safety, I just feel like it's a big investment for just a small section, and the hardiness. And I mean, have we done any soil testing? Have we looked down there? How deep are we going to have to plant them? Because willows like water.
Yeah, it's a great question. We did do potholing and figured out there was not any topsoil put into those medians. And so that is a part of this cost. We'll have to add the topsoil into this and dig out the subgrade that's there because it's not conducive for trees. The history, from what I understood, is that when the Highway 412 widening project was done, the initial goal for RDOT was to put in concrete medians. And the city board at the time did not like that. And so they placed in the grass. In 2011, I believe, we got a general improvement grant from back when those were still around from a state representative to allow us to buy the mowers to maintain it, because we understood if we left it up to the highway department, they were maintaining it once or twice a quarter. So it was up to staff to go out and mow them. And so I think the goal for the board in 2018 was to try to address a lot of those concerns.
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor. Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Director Allen is right. Several of us were not on the board when this became a board goal. I do remember having the presentation, and I love the idea of having trees and landscaping as we enter from Oklahoma into Siloam, or West Siloam into Siloam. And I am all for this extra safety that this can provide, but I do have a real concern with the cost. When you did present this to us last year, a little over a year ago, the expected cost for what you're doing now was $172,000.
Now, there was an asterisk that said the above amounts do not include the $263,000 grant, which will be distributed across the 3 phases. Now, what that said to me was that the expected bid was $172,000, but you would take $87,000 out of it for the bid. So what we were left with was under $100,000.
That would have been, we would have added that money to that portion, breaking it up into the 3 phases.
Okay, so the expected bid was 172, but then plus 87.
Right. And I think we budgeted 262.
Okay.
Was what was approved in the 2022 budget.
Okay.
For this.
So still just more than what we expected
Yes.
it would be.
Absolutely.
We're looking at probably at least $500,000 for the 3 phases. For the 3 phases. No.
Probably be closer to $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we, okay.
And it's all market driven, depending on the year and what's going on when we bid them out.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I want the safety. I just have to think that there could be another way, and I appreciate that you've already come down on some of that. I just have to think there could be another way, because, well, now you're saying, I was hoping $500,000, closer to $1 million. There's a lot of streets that need repaired, a lot of other projects that need to be done. Did have a question from a citizen who asked the question that I think Marla was asking: how will trees do in the middle of all that traffic? Will the exhaust, the pollution, hurt them? I think you kind of addressed that. And then I think you sort of addressed this too. Does it take care of all the maintenance that the city already does? It won't.
No, ma'am.
It'll just provide safety for when the maintenance is being done through those, the paved part.
We would hope that we still, the initial look was to try to eliminate us having to mow it. That cost came in higher, so we kept value engineering down. We still have to mow the median. Yeah. Or someone have to maintain the median, but we think the 2 foot, from what we've seen over time,
provides a barrier.
Maintaining this provides a barrier. And, Direct Allen alluded to it. Future interstate highway traffic counts now about 30,000 traffic counts. It used to be we had a day when we knew the traffic counts were low. We could get out there and maybe at a certain time of day and not have as much potential conflict. That is since expired. And I'll be remiss to say this in that timeline also, this was a project we paused during COVID because when we were looking at cost-saving measures during COVID, this was a project that we paused. Sorry about that.
Here's one quick question. What happens to the grant if we were not to use it in the, I know you had to extend it at one time. What happens to that grant if we don't use it?
We would return it to the Walton Family Foundation.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Brad, just a moment. Lisa had asked for the floor, so that's fine.
Get back on track here. So I had to go back and look at some history, and like I said, I sent you guys an email and looked, and I couldn't remember accepting the grant because I wasn't here when we accepted the grant. At the time, and I didn't see it in the minutes. I don't, so the videos online don't go back to February 2019. And so I couldn't watch the video. So I have a question because of that, based off of that. So at the time that you presented the grant to us, to accept the grant, did we know kind of a cost estimate at that time? Does anybody remember?
I think that was a question that was asked, and I think if I recall correctly, we alluded to we need to do a little bit more research because we weren't sure about irrigation and what that would cost. And then even at the time, waiting on the conditional approval from RDOT to really understand what the full impact would have been. I think the grant from the Walton Family Foundation was to cover the trees, not the entire improvements.
Okay. 'Cause I really feel bad that the employees spent so much time on this and a lot of time on this.
It's our job. It's what we do.
And I love the idea, but it is the cost that is a shock factor.
It's understandable.
The price tag.
Brad?
Madam Mayor, I was on the board at that time, and we questioned several things because I was on the firehouse when we put in 412, and the engineers were incorrect on the turnarounds, and those had to be redesigned, if you recall that. I was a city employee. I just pointed it out, so you guys made the adjustment, the board at that time. When we asked, staff brought back numbers, and they were large, just like Don alluded to. It is, and as I sat down and looked over this, because I was excited. 412 is ugly. We can't get rid of the signs, right? We have to keep the signs because RDOT says.
That's correct.
RDOT says, RDOT says, RDOT says. And here we are today. Once we got rid of the irrigation, survivability in that soil composition is going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. I hate that I can guarantee we spent more than 30,000 staff hours. If you put money to it, we've exceeded that. But having said that, the best money we've done on 412 is the American Legion, $8,000 a year on American flags. That's the best thing we've done. Second, I do believe your new Parks and Recs director, sorry, Travis, I'm going to call you out. I believe if we are proactive on pre-emergence and use proper herbicides on that grass, we can reduce the mowing and allow that to grow a little bit higher. We've neglected that with the last management there. I think it's like turf at a golf course. If you manage it properly, your maintenance will be reduced. And since we have 9-inch, we've increased the grass height to 9-inch before we can give you a penalty, which I was against because I can't let my grass even, it's tough. I try to let it go 9 inches. I cried. But I think there's some stuff we can do in-house, and just right now with the climb it's at, I'll be honest with you, I just did it in the workshop. I just found the money for Sager Creek. You're welcome.
And to speak to what you're saying about the pre-emergent, that is, whether you approve this or not, that was part of the plan to try to reduce our time to have to mow it and do it properly. I think we've got staff that are knowledgeable now to help us figure that out and apply it at the right time of year and make sure we can maintain it. I would say, if the cost is an issue and we're still talking staff safety, maybe we look at removing everything but the concrete, because I still think that would provide some safety and us not have to maintain the nose or the toe of the intersections. And you also notice too that when we do cut the grass, that's where everything gets collected, cigarette butts and trash and everything else, because of the grass. So again, this is your project, it's your pleasure.
I would additionally say, if I can go to Lowe's and buy a Roomba to vacuum my house or whatever brand, Sharp,
Yeah.
that I'm not to specify, and if I can get a lawnmower to mow my grass for me, and I know you just winched, and I applaud the mowers that we bought in the past, but looking out to the future is, an unmanned device on there working his little yin-yang off as we go out and do other stuff.
Mayor?
There is a.
They do have that.
They do.
I'm
You can
aware.
get that.
That's why,
Oh, okay.
That's why I said the word yin-yang, because
Okay.
I was going to say stronger words, but then I caught myself. I apologize.
Just a moment, David. Philip, do you have a comment on that?
I not on Director Burns' comment. I'm just going to leave that one alone. But with the exception of, I'm not sure the highway department would allow a unmanned device to be mowing out there because of potential of something going crazy and causing wrecks. But I agree with Director Allen. I mean, this took longer than we wanted, but we did come back in 2021 and we presented it, and we wanted to at least get it back here. And I don't want it to, I mean, one of the things, I don't want those issues to fall in a crack, right? And whatever happened. So it is a lot of money. And assuming it stayed the same, yes, it's $900,000, right? for 3 phases, assuming they're all equal. And there's $250,000 coming from the Walton family through a grant. So you're at $650, somewhere along in there. It's you know, it's a big project. It started out as a great idea. Landscape it, get rid of the turf, put some flowers beds in there that we can do that, and the cost was extremely high. So we started value engineering, getting back down, and as we did that, the costs kept escalating still, as we see today. So, but, you know, from staff's perspective, we wanted to bring it back to you. You're welcome to turn it down. You're welcome to, Madam Mayor asked for a motion and it failed for lack of a motion, and we'll move on. I would say that at some point in the future, if we can go back to the image, what I think if we do nothing, if you let this fail, which sounds like it will, I would probably suggest to staff that we look at a later date doing something that Don said, which is to potentially look at whether it's stamped concrete or not. I don't know, because it wouldn't be very wide. But those fingers where you have the turn lanes, and there's, how wide is that grass? 1 foot wide?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, at some point, we could get rid of it as it's shown up there, starting about where it all turns to stamped concrete, at some point coming back and just looking at concreting all that in, so that's the worst place ever, because I can only, as an employee, weed eat that. I can't mow it. I can't be on a mower. And maybe at least bringing it out to where that doesn't have to happen, and that would reduce a lot of the cost. But that's another issue altogether. So I just wanted to say, we understand it. It's a lot of money, but because we brought it up before, we wanted to bring it to you and show you that here's where we are with this project. And it may need to go away at the time being. Maybe, you know, prices come down in the future and everybody gets hungry to do landscaping, and maybe we can, you know, raise it back up at some point. But it is a lot of money, and we would understand if it doesn't go forward. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. David?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the history of this is right what Don said. This was brought, when I sat right there, RDOT was in the audience, and they were going to do concrete. And we just thought that's so ugly. We would rather have grass, maybe do shrubs. But we had no clue there was going to be 111 one-way signs. That was never brought up by RDOT. They never gave us a heads up. Because if we'd known that, we'd have said, go ahead and concrete it. It's too much trouble to mow around those signs, and it is. But on the other hand, with prices have gone up, I mean, we're arguing $30,000. This is 10 times that amount that I don't believe the public is going to support for 1/3 of the distance that we want to do. On top of that, this is a board goal of which only 3 board members, I mean, Brad and Carol, I can't remember, I think Reed was here, but maybe not. And so there's current board goals that this money could go to, or from 21 or 2020. So I mean, yes, employees spent time on it, and we hate to say no, but that's part of any organization. Projects get canceled, projects get moved to the side for other projects. That's part of any big organization when you have a lot of money being spent in a lot of projects. We have to get back down, especially in the fact that we all know we're in a recession now. This entire country's in a recession. The world's in a recession. We cannot look at $1 million just willy-nilly. We've got to get back to the needs versus wants, and this is a want. I think we all wish now that we'd have just let RDOT concrete the whole thing, but hindsight 2020, and I don't want us to make a mistake going forward because we made a mistake back in 2010 or 2011.
Madam Mayor.
So I'm talking.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
So I believe that if we were to vote this through, we would have a lot of flack from our public. The amount of time and delays that it would cause to put the landscaping in, I think would also give us a real black eye. We're talking about it takes us 6 hours to mow now. The amount of time that it would take to just landscape this, we're not going to be out of the time that it would take to then landscape further. So, and I still go back that I think in the long run it would become a driver hazard because the median's not wide enough. So I can't support it, but those are the reasons I can't support it. I think the public would really, really be down on us.
Thank you. David? Carol?
I am one of those that was for landscaping that median. I had no idea it was going to be that expensive because I was one of those that put that on the board goal. And at this point in time, I do not want it to go forward. I'm not interested in spending that kind of money. If I was going to make a motion, I would make a motion and I would defeat it. So I am not in favor of this.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mindy.
I've already said I express that I have concerns. I would have to say the same thing. I could not support it at this time. And hopefully there may be something else that the Walmart grant could go toward. Don't know what that might be, but if we have to return it, we have to return it.
We'll consult with them and figure out what we need to do. And we appreciate y'all's time
Walton
in reviewing
Foundation,
this.
I'm sorry, Walton
Yes.
Family Foundation.
Yes, absolutely.
So should we ask Jay, is it better to have a motion that fails for lack of a second, or is there a motion to reject all bids?
Either one works.
Either one works.
So if we have a motion to approve and a second, then we can vote, and if we all vote no, then it fails. It
And
fails.
if you don't have a second, it fails
And
anyway.
if you don't have a second, it fails. So either way.
Yeah, if somebody makes a motion, then there's fail
And there's
for
no
lack of a
second, it
then-
fails.
yeah.
That's right.
So I'm going to make a motion, Madam Mayor, that we approve the contract for Highway 412 Median Improvements Phase 1.
Now everybody just stay silent.
And do we have a second for that motion? We do not. Motion dies for lack of a second. Contract is not approved.
And thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you for your patience, Don, hearing all of our input. On to the
Then-
next project.
On to the next project. Next is the appointments for the Utility Commission Interview Committee. Philip?
I think we just found Director Burns additional money for Sager Creek.
That's a perfect segue right there.
I was gonna stroke out.
So, earlier this year in September, you approved Ordinance 2223, which established a 5-member utility commission to provide input on matters related to the utilities, anything from operations to rates and everything in between. So we've been posting public notices in the paper, on our social media sites, asking for interested parties to apply and submit an application. They can go online and submit the application. They can pick up an application from the city clerk's office. We're accepting applications through October 31st. Appointments to boards and commissions created by the city board, per the state statute, the state vests that authority to the city administrator, subject to those appointments being approved by the board. However, you as a board indicated in past discussions that you would like to do the interviews and make a recommendation to yourselves as to who is appointed on that utility commission. So with that, I drafted this memo to suggest that maybe the best way to go about this is for those of you who are interested in being on the interview committee to nominate yourselves, let the mayor know, let the mayor then make a recommendation to the board of who on the board that interview committee would consist of. And as soon as that's done, then we would start looking at, staff would be working with that interview committee to start looking at possible dates to perform the interviews of the applicants that have submitted an application. So, Madam Mayor, with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. So, board, as I understand it, I am going to be asking each of you for nominations for the 3 members to serve on the review committee for the applications. I will tell you that I have already had comments from different directors, and Director Allen and Director Smiley have both expressed interest in being on this 3-director committee. So with that, I would ask then, do you have other nominations? Is the 3rd nomination, is there someone that you would like to nominate, or do you want to approve those as presented?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Lisa.
can we nominate new directors that are coming on? When are we going to start the process?
I would just say this, okay? I would say that they are not sworn in as directors. They don't actually take office until the 1st of January. I think that this, my personal opinion, this 3-person committee really needs to be directors that are currently serving on the board. That's just my personal opinion.
So when does the selection board start looking at applications?
Right now, well, go ahead, Philip.
My opinion would be, as soon as the interview committee is determined, we would start trying to schedule interviews in November. Because I would expect the board to appoint the utility commissioners at, no later than the last meeting in December, the last meeting in the year. But preferably maybe the first meeting in December. But I don't know that we'll get there in time because of vacations. And generally speaking, the way I've seen this happen in the past, you bring in 6 people and you try to schedule them 15-minute intervals, and you're there for 3 hours interviewing 6 people because it takes, longer. And right now, I don't know exactly how many off the top of my head. There's probably 8 or 10 plus applications that we have already received. There may be as many as 12. So who's ever on the committee, you're gonna spend, there's a possibility of spending 2 nights interviewing for 2 or 3 hours at a time.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
I would suggest, since you have me and Carol, possibly Reed be the 3rd, since it's just.
Okay, so you would like to.
I don't know. I'm volunteering to read without asking him.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I think Reed would be an excellent choice. Yes.
Yeah, so do I.
Do you have time,
I second
Reed?
that.
I think I talk too much.
True, you would make the meetings go too long.
Good one.
So if.
Madam Mayor,
yes.
I'd be glad to be the 3rd.
Thank you, Reed. So if that is the case, then at this point in time, my nomination or my suggestion to you as a board would be that we put Director Allen, Director Hunt, and Director Carroll on.
I was the one,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
because I still am interested.
Yes, Director Allen, Director Smiley, and Director Carroll. Thank you. So I will take a voice vote and ask if everyone agrees with those 3 serving on that. Yes, Philip.
Madam Mayor, I would suggest you ask for a motion to approve that
Okay.
nomination and get an official
I'll
vote.
make a
can
motion
do
that
that.
we accept them through acclamation.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Now, can I just say all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That is approved. And thank you for your service on that committee.
Thank you for the vote.
So with that, where are we? We are now ready for our staff reports.
So, Mr. McLaughlin, the HR manager, is going to present you had asked some time ago when we presented the compensation plan to have a summary of the benefits, and Misty?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Board. We had the JER HR group
Misty,
come.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Would you speak into the mic?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
We had the JER HR group come back. Bruce Johansson came back with some numbers for us as far as benefits, because you guys were concerned about maybe we didn't have the best benefits. As far as health insurance, I think we look really good in the health insurance area. Siloam Springs, we ask employees to contribute 11% of the rates, and that is across the board. Whether you are employee only, whether you have employee plus one, employee plus family, you're only paying 11%. The other cities, Fayetteville, they average 15%. Bella Vista has employees pay 16% for employee only, 25% for employee plus family. Bentonville is asking for 25% from employees. Springdale, 30%. So we look really good in this area. In fact, just asking the employees for the 11%.
We should sell that whenever we
Right?
try to hire new people.
Well, we do.
You don't want to go over there.
We definitely do. We try a new hire orientation. So we also have the health savings account. We did some comparisons there. We look good in this too. We contribute up to $1,710. Now that is, if the employee contributes $40, we match $40. We also have a wellness plan program. If you get your points every year, you get 750 more. So we do really well in the HSA part. Everyone else is less than us except for employee plus for Springdale and employee plus family for Fayetteville. So we look good in the HSA contribute part too. As far as retirement, City of Siloam ranges, our contribution is 6 to 18% depending on your position. We have the employees contribute at least 3%. They can contribute more than that if they would like to, but they have to contribute at least 3%. And we do have immediate vesting, which is a big deal. So Springdale contributes 6% with employees contributing 3%, but they have a 5-year vesting. So you would not be able to get all your money from the city unless you put in 5 years of work. Bella Vista contributes up to 10%. They match employee contributions 2% for every 1%. The employee contributes up to 5%. They also have immediate vesting. The big one here is, Director Rissler talked about, Fayetteville contributes 12% with employees contributing 3%, and they do have immediate vesting. So that is better than ours right now. Bentonville, Rogers, and Centerton participate in APERS. Employees contribute 15.32%. The current employee contribution rate is 5.25, with an increase of 0.25% each year for 8 years. So their contribution as an employee is having to go up each year. So that's kind of, you guys have all this information. The data has been presented, but we just wanted to bring this forth to you guys so that you guys could talk about it. But we are available for questions.
Misty? Yeah, Lisa, and then David. Go ahead.
On the employee, on the PPO and the high deductible, when you said 11%, was that counting the PPO and the high deductible?
We only have a high deductible plan.
Okay.
We do not offer a PPO.
And did you find out from them which ones offer a PPO and a high deductible?
They did not offer that information for us that I seen. So
Okay, because that would make up the difference of the percentage.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the retirement, I think one of the issues I had as an employee here and going to the city of Fayetteville, especially when they offered me double salary, they offered me 12% in my retirement. I get there, 30 days later, I get a 15% increase in my salary, and but my benefits were similar. But back then, we had a PPO and a high deductible, so the comparison was easy.
Yeah, well, the PPO is, the premium is usually higher also for the employee.
Right.
So.
But it depends on what they pay in, yeah.
Right.
It would change that number.
Yes.
If you put those numbers, but it's still, they have good insurance, and Siloam has good insurance.
Yes, we do.
In my opinion. But the retirement, I do have an issue with. I've always had an issue with. I think we devalue the employees when we say that you're only worth 6% and somebody else is worth 18%. Because if you take our solid waste people off the street for a week and you take our admin staff out of the office for a week, which ones do you think the citizens are going to notice first? They're going to notice that the solid waste people are not there. They have a value in this city. They are just as important as any employee, and every piece of the puzzle has to be there to make it work, to make the picture. And so I really think that we need to look at that retirement and make it more equal to show the value of each employee. That's my opinion.
David.
Very good points. Yeah, I agree. We should be more uniform across the board for employees just to make the playfield more level. On this whole presentation, Misty, is this only for full-time employees? Does it include part-time?
It is full-time only. Part-time do not get benefits.
Part-time do not get benefit. Is
Correct.
there some reason for that?
They do not work the required hours, so they do not get the benefits.
You have to work 32 hours.
Yes.
Pardon?
You have to work 32 hours to get benefits.
You got to talk in the microphone. I can't hear you.
You have to work 32 hours.
Okay. Well,
to get
I didn't
benefits.
know if any other cities did part-time, so, okay.
No, not that I'm aware of.
When you say high deductible, what's the deductible?
So currently the deductible for employee only is $2,000 and $4,000 out of pocket. We are working on the family to lower it a little, but the family plan is $4,000, and then it's $8,000 out of pocket.
And then on the second page, Misty, you have Siloam Springs, Fayetteville, Bella Vista, and Rogers, current employees only. What does that mean?
Just the employee, not retirees, just the employees that are working for them. Yes.
I thought maybe it was like only as of now. Any future employees, it's going to be different. I was confused.
Director Allen, I'm sorry. Misty, I think Rogers had a change. Did they
Oh, they
not?
did. I think they did have a change, yes.
There was a change in Rogers' program where all the existing employees had this
They
program,
grandfathered.
and then the new employees moved to something else.
Yes, they
I
grandfathered
think
them.
that was the reference to, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that
That's
was the
okay,
reference
yes.
to existing employees.
Okay. Well, on the next paragraph, it says provide 10 annual vacation days for years 1 to 5. What comes after year 5?
You get 3 weeks vacation.
3 weeks,
Mhm.
because that wasn't in here, and so I didn't know. I didn't think
Yes.
it was, and so I was like, well, what comes after? So 10 annual, 1 to 5, every year for 1 through 5. And then after 5 years, it's 3 weeks.
Yep, it's the 15 days, yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
And after 20 years, it got even better.
Yes.
I'm just going to bring up a voice from the past, Bob Heifel, that used to show up to these meetings a lot, and he ran against me the first time I ran, and he thanked me a month later for getting this position, because he had zero tolerance for this board. I was on it. He's very kind and direct. But he has said the greatest asset we have is the city employee. And we've done a great job. It's taken time, but what we're going to review on the budget close is a significant jump. And this would be in 23 going into your next budget cycle. Addressing these percentages would be another significant improvement. So that's my Bob Heifel words of encouragement.
I think his words were, he dodged a bullet. by you winning, Brad.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Lisa.
I didn't say thank you, Misty, for putting all this together.
yes.
It's amazing. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I do want to thank you too. There's a lot of information here. I do appreciate it. And I too feel that our employees are our greatest asset of the city.
Yes, ma'am.
I've always said that, and I remember Bob Heifel. He used to come to all the meetings, and since you got on the board, Brad, he didn't come anymore.
No,
I'm sorry.
Well, he lets you know. Yeah, he's there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Misty.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Next then is our third quarter reports for the Chamber, Main Street, and History Museum. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you have the third quarter reports. I won't go through them, but you have the third quarter report from the Chamber, as you stated, from Main Street and from the History Museum. Was mentioned earlier today, I believe, earlier tonight, about the makerspace. You provided money to the makerspace, and they were to give you an annual report, and so that's included also. And then you also have the third quarter update of the board's 2021 and 2022 goals. And I am more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has about any of those reports before I move on to the admin report.
Directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I just
Carol.
wanted to thank the people that did provide their quarterly reports. I appreciate it.
And for coming here tonight.
Yes.
Maybe we should consider putting these at the first of the meetings. Yes, I know. Mary's back here applauding.
We needed your presence as in the audience, so we appreciate that.
We appreciate you being here.
Yes, yes, Brad.
Hey, Philip, if you could get, I don't see Chamber here, but as I read through this, I'm just struggling on why we're being billed for attending a ribbon cutting, passing out mask at CBG, attending chamber events in Springdale and in Fayetteville. And if you guys would just take the time and read through this, you know, maybe I'm just stuck in the past where we did funding and it added staff and they did work, but this billing doesn't make sense to me because it feels like it's what the chamber does. And so that breakdown, I love the spreadsheet, but some of these things just don't make any sense. Attending the Woka Kayak Park with the mayor, it's like if I attend a workshop, then I should get extra pay for attending that. I've attended, everybody's been to Woka Kayak Park. No board member here got extra pay, and we didn't bill anybody. It's the expectation. So I guess I'm struggling with some of the expectation of what chamber actually does, and then the breakdown of the billing. It just, I don't think it reflects well on chamber activities, and so I just, you know, maybe get an ear. I got an email or a text today attending a chamber event for Ward 1 and the district, and if I wanted to give 2-minute speech, which I'd love to, it'd be about Sager Creek, by the way. But I don't want to attend that event if that's billable hours for something that I'm just accustomed to doing that's already been done. The American Legion, I think the Republican women have always done debates and stuff, and I just, maybe they charged us and I didn't see it on a spreadsheet, or this is the first time we've seen a spreadsheet, and that's what we're getting for that. But I just called a question with the chamber activities being billed, and it just doesn't seem. That's why the membership pays for that. Whataburger is going to be a chamber member, and I didn't go to that, but I called a question on that. So if you can get clarification of what that means to a simple guy like me, that'd be great.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I
Carol.
have the same questions, because to me, a lot of these things are what the chamber, that's being the chamber. In fact, one of these events, I think, is an event that Director Rissler did at the pool, which is the City Employee Appreciation Cookout and Pool Party. That was yours. So I don't know why he's billing us for that.
Is this billing hours, or is they just showing their activity?
Well, basically, we
I
give him
mean,
so much money,
it's
right? And he
both.
accounts for
But
that?
it's both, isn't it? I mean,
This is their report that they are required to provide as to how they met their contract deliverables. And if you've got a minute, let me read you the contract deliverables. So there are about 14 different contract deliverables in their contract. Act as a dual liaison with city staff to AEDC. This is to include attending AEDC meetings, developing responses to inquiries and requests for information from AEDC staff, and have a working knowledge of those various state economic development incentives that come through AEDC. That's number one. act as a city liaison to the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District. That's number 2. Number 3, act as city liaison to the Northwest Arkansas Council. Number 4, participate as a member of the city's Internal Economic Development Committee. We meet on a semi-monthly basis. Attend local and regional economic development conferences and trade shows to promote the city. Number 6, work to strengthen relationships with local, state, and regional economic development partners. Number 7, at the direction of the city administrator, perform analysis of various economic development and market data trends. Number 8, work with the city and at times take the lead on issues related to commercial services such as housing, public transportation, communication utilities, commercial property listings and workforce, and business development. Attend 2 to 4 meetings per year with the EDC. Attend 2 or more meetings per year with the Northwest Arkansas Development District. Those are 9 and 10. Number 11, have a 90% attendance at the City Economic Development Team meetings. Number 12, attend 2 or more local, regional, retail, and economic development trade shows. 13, provide copies of all the requests for information from the AEDC along with responses as part of the quarterly reports. And number 14, submit quarterly reports based on the format attached hereto. So I would say that there might be some, room for interpretation of where those particular issues or reporting items that you're referring to fit in there, but the intent was to say those are the deliverables. And so I don't know, Director Burns, you want clarification. I'm assuming that would mean you would ask for the chamber to be here at some point and try to justify how those fit. It's not billable hours. We pay a set amount. Sorry, I'm getting to that question. It's not a billable amount. It's a set amount every month. So but they're required to report those activities. So.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm just going to call it my ignorance, but if the average citizen looked at that and they have access to that, I don't think there's certain items on there that just don't have value. That is just what the chamber does and has always done, but maybe that trend is changing. I looked up some formats on what is billable, and so when you look at different billable things and whatever format you look at, I mean, you could debate this, that, and the other. Once again, I love the spreadsheet. I just think some of those things that the chamber's been doing since the dawn of time. It's just what the chamber does, new businesses and things in the community, but I may be incorrect, and that's my observation from reviewing that quarterly report. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, David.
I would guess that the report is simply a list of everything they do rather than breaking down, oh, we only did this for the city. I think the report most probably is a list of their activities that they can actually attest to. To say, oh, we applied this to the city, 30,000 or whatever, I don't think they're doing that. I'm just guessing, but I think it's a list of all of their activity for the quarter.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, this looks like a scope and sequence setting out of a textbook to me, and that looks like they're covering everything they need to cover within a year. But what we really need to look at is the outcomes. Are we getting from these activities what we expect? I can put down my activities, but am I performing and giving you what you need? And when I attended that meeting, I met with this person. That's the outcome. I know if something came from that. But just like the Burks meeting and everything, that they attended for 4 hours. I know that's in there, but I want to know what came from it, the actual outcome, not the duty they performed, but the benefit that the city received. And I think that, I look at what the museum does. They did their own taxes and, they cut cost. And I celebrate them for all they do on the limited budget, let alone look at the chamber that's out fundraising in another town.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Lisa.
I think we're all going to have different opinions on the money that we give to the different nonprofits. I think the museum, I've always said it from day one, I think it should be part of the city. I think we should bring it in, fund them, and it should be part of the city. I've had complaints about Main Street. I've had complaints that you're taking citizens' money and you're covering one section of town only. I've had lots of people on 412 say, wait a minute, what about us? Why are we not getting that benefit? And so where Main Street doesn't cover, I justified that the chamber does cover. They cover every business in town. They cover every citizen in town. They support, they cover where Main Street can't, because 412 is not part of Main Street, so they can't. So I think it just gives us an overall coverage of providing for our community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Philip, we are on to our administrator's report, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. Number of expenditures to report, mostly all of them in the electric department. So $44,875 for 21 50-foot poles and 25 45-foot poles and 30 40-foot wooden poles for inventory. $41,200 in the electric department for 200 Cobra Head streetlight fixtures for inventory. $42,390 in the electric department for 15,000 linear feet of single aught or 1-aught primary wire for inventory and general line extensions. $38,960 in the electric department for two 50 kVA single phase transformers, two 225 kVA 3-phase pad mount transformers for inventory and new customers. And then per the resolution 6121 for inventory, $78,665 again in the electric department for seven 25 kVA single phase transformers, two 112.5 kVA 3-phase transformers, and two 150 kVA 3-phase transformers. On the sales tax, the cities for September, we were up 7% compared to September last year. For year to date, we're up 9% compared to the same time frame last year. September for the county, what we received from the county was up less than 1% for September compared to September last year, and year to date is up 3%. I wanted to shout out to the Siloam Springs 911 call center. The Public Safety Communications Supervisor, Brianna Valentine, accepted 2 awards on behalf of our 911 Communications Center from the Arkansas Crime Information Center, ACIC. The first award was for the department's dedication to completing an outstanding ACIC systems audit. Verified all entries, including warrants and stolen property, were accurate. And the second award was presented for an outstanding Criminal Justice Information Service, the CJIS audit, requiring all employees and vendors who have successfully completed the mandatory training requirements to access the ACIC system. And what's even more impressive, in my humble opinion, was that our communications center was only one of 2 agencies to receive these awards out of more than 75 911 terminals in the state. So they are doing their job. They are doing a great job of operating that 911 system. And I want to thank Chief Gilbert for his dedication to that, and for Communications Supervisor Ms. Valentine and her overseeing that division. Obviously it's very, very important to the public safety, even though they don't get they're not seen like police and fire are, but it's hugely important to all of us. We already talked about the Utility Commission, but again, anyone who's interested in being on the Utility Commission, terms start in January 2023. There are 4-year terms staggered, originally with 1-, 2-, and 3-year terms beginning. Any utility customer and qualified elector within the city can apply. And again, applications are being accepted through October 31st. You can apply online or pick up an application in the city clerk's office. Regarding fall cleanup, we picked up 125 tons of material. We spent 385 personnel hours between sanitation and street divisions collecting and hauling the materials. The total cost was $15,241. That included over $4,000 in tipping fees, almost $7,000 in labor, and then when you charge out the equipment based on FEMA's rates, that was another $4,400. It's not out-of-pocket expense, but that's just the cost of using the equipment. And then the last thing on my list was seating arrangements. You can see that the city clerk has moved back up there. Thank you. The mayor and I were talking, and subject to working out some mic issues, we think it's probably time that myself and the city attorney move back up there. But the mayor had indicated that she appreciates being able to look out and see our faces. I guess the expression on my face, I'm not 100% sure, but so what we were thinking at the next board meeting, rather than Jay and I sitting on either side of the mayor as historically been, is that we would take Director Allen's seat and Director Hunt's seat. That's why I'm bringing it up, Director Allen. That so that the mayor could see my face, which would probably be sitting over there, and Jay's face sitting over here. But I wanted to, I didn't want to surprise you with it.
I like the room that we have here. I like the
You want us to stay here, right?
Yeah, simply because COVID is still out there, and I appreciate the distance that we have here. And I like to look at you over there. Yeah, I know.
And see your face
the
also.
podium does cause a problem, and I can't ever see Jay. But you know, I like
and
to be able to
we're perfectly fine with that, because it's this struggle that, I mean, COVID is still here. Renee needed to move there. She was having problems with the vent and moving that. And we're happy to stay here too, but I just wanted to have some discussion about it, and you know,
I like my little corner, and I bet Director Hunt does too.
And I spread out. My paper is all spread out if anybody looked over here, but I like being able to see you because I can't see you when you sit in the middle.
Well, and we are talking, I don't think Don's here, but we're talking, especially at the Planning Commission level, to create more permanent tables here, because I think for the planners to be able to respond at times and not always have to jump up there to the podium. So we won't make the move just yet, but we'll continue here, especially for COVID. And if we get the permanent tables in here, we may make it better, and we'll see. If Renee's not going to sit over there, I like at least being able to pick Jay's brain. I don't want him sitting all the way across the room, but we'll see if we can get a glass podium or a smaller podium at some point in the future. So that's my report, Madam Mayor. We'll be right here in 2 weeks at this chair.
Thank you.
In your place.
In my place, right here.
So, at this time, we are at the director's reports. Before we get into that, I would also like to say thank you to our 911 operators and our call center for their continued efficiency at what they do. They care about our citizens, and that shows in the awards that they've been given, that they do their job and do it well, and sometimes under very, very hard conditions, I know. So thank you. Thank you to them and to our other staff who have been here tonight, and they have been very diligent in bringing information to this board, and we appreciate that very much. And our administrator, thank you for what you all do and keeping us moving forward. And with that, we will move to the director's reports. Tonight, we will start with Marla, and we will come around to Brad.
You dropped that in there.
I did. I dropped that in right there. Just
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have much. I just really enjoyed the different conversations we were able to have tonight. Staff being available. Thank you, Main Street and Museum, for being here and staying the whole time. We appreciate it. And I really think that we accomplished a lot of good things tonight. On my item list, Utility Commission remind people, Quarter Road's going to be closed Friday from Lincoln to Waukesha. The Manna Center is doing their holiday meal bag drive again, where we give you an empty bag, you fill it up, bring it back to us, and we give it to our clients for the holiday meals. JBU's toilet paper game. I love that thing. It's coming up on the 28th, so it's pretty neat to attend. Got to be there. And this Saturday is a marching band competition at the high school. My grandson will be marching. So they are very fun to attend, and so it also supports the school because you have to pay to watch it. But it's very well organized, and it is very theatrical. I could not believe it. It was wonderful. So that's what I have. But I have one little thing to add. I am now losing the sight in my left eye. So I have no right eye, and I have part of a left eye. So I feel like God's plan for me was to finish this year, and I'll do the best that I can. I'm not seeing very good, and I'm not reading very well either. So, but I just appreciate prayers and support for that, and with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Marla, and our prayers will be with you, have been and will continue to be. And along with that, I want to say I received an email that there was a group that specifically prayed for me and for my strength and guidance in this job, and I want to let them know I do appreciate that, and I know we have others that pray continuously for this board and for their direction, for their wisdom in leading this community, and I believe that those prayers work, and I believe this board feels that, and I just want to publicly say thank you to our citizens that are helping us by that support. So thank you, and we wish you well, Marla. I know God has got you in his hands.
Absolutely.
So with that, Lisa?
So I lied to Marla. I told her I only had one thing. I have two things. On the 2023 compensation plan, since we didn't discuss it, I kind of want to put a bug in there. I have a question about part-time employees. I noticed it didn't include part-time employees, and as Brad said earlier, our employees are our biggest assets. I mean, they're our most valuable assets that we have. And so I really hope that we can look into the part-time employees as well. And then on November 13th, the Siloam Music, they are having a Siloam Music Festival at Camp Siloam from 2:45 to 4:45. They played at the Chautauqua Amphitheater this summer, I think. They did a presentation there. It was amazing. So if you need something to do on a Sunday afternoon from 2:45 to 4:45 on November 13th, join them at Camp Siloam.
Thank you. Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This morning, I was privileged to attend a memorial service for Eugene Whitmore, who is a gentleman who spent most of his 67 years right here in this town, made quite an impact. It was interesting to see the numbers of people that attended, but also the variety of people that he had an impact on. And I was glad to be a part of that, glad to be even a small part of his life. But he represented Siloam Springs very well, I felt. Tonight's going to be a little bit of a chilly night. I don't know if any of you have campers or things like that that you might want to make sure they're winterized. Take your water hose off the faucet. But after we have a cold spell, we're going to get right back into where I like it, nice and cool and sunny. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Carol?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Prayers for you, Marla. You're always in my thoughts. Congratulations to the Siloam Springs 911 call center. I have had to use 911. It's been a while, but I've used it, and they were very prompt, and it was nice to know that they were there when I needed them and they could help. I want to congratulate the museum on their fundraiser. It was very enjoyable. One of our directors participated and did a fabulous job as one of our founders. So I won't mention any names because he might be shy. So, and also I want to thank the Park House Inn because that's where it was held, and to the Siloam Springs Arts Center for their participation. And that's really all I have. I really enjoyed the conversation that I think we all had tonight. I think it just seems like we get more open after each board meeting, and we get a lot accomplished. No hard feelings. We just get our job done and go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. David?
Pull that close. I want to express my condolences to the Whitmore family as well. Eugene's part of the legendary Whitmore family of Siloam. Their dad had the music store downtown. My brother and I would go down there and buy records. I grew up with Eugene's sister Marcia, and his son Tyler grew up with my son Tucker and was over at our house all the time. It was very sad. And it was really summarized well by his brother-in-law, Paul Phillips, on Facebook, that he wasn't just his brother-in-law, he was his brother. And it was a very touching comment and said a lot about what he meant to this community. I also want to acknowledge the loss of local legend within the last 30 days. I shouldn't say Mr. Coach Cliff Crowder, over 90+ years old and a longtime supporter of conservative moral values. Had a long career at JVU. He'll be greatly missed. His wonderful smile anytime you saw him. He was happy to see you and had a great thing to say. Prayers for you, Marla, with your health, your eyesight to return. I am a big believer in the power of prayer and what miracles can happen. So you're continued in my prayers. I'm fully aware I'm going to get in trouble with the public after supporting the golf course, but I want to say after evaluating all sides of the situation, the stopgap protective measures that our staff put in the resolution, I believe this is better than the high cost that we would be responsible for if the golf course was not there. And I want the public to understand that thought process. I was much more adamant that we work tonight to save close to $1 million overall in defeating the media beautification, which is nice, but not a necessity that is necessarily going to bring business or provide a quality of life as the golf course would do. And that money can go towards streets or the beautification of Sager Creek. And I couldn't help but laugh out loud when Administrator Patterson said, "There's your money, Brad, for Sager Creek." Is perfect segue. Now I'm going to be negative. I'm a huge stickler for transparency to our bosses, the citizen taxpayers who vote us in to represent them. And I'm disappointed that our proposed budget is not on our city website. We are going over this over the course of several meetings, and our bosses should be able to review it online. Yes, it is simply a proposed budget. It's not in stone, open to discussion and many changes and amendments. But the public should be able to look at it at the same time we see it. And by them not getting the big book that we get, even provided online, I think it is not being transparent. So I would encourage us to put the proposed budget on there with the stickler, proposed budget 2023. And I would also like us to add the audit. I know that we usually don't put that on until we receive it. I would have liked this board to actually have received the hard copy before tonight. I've asked this last year that we receive it as soon as staff receives it so that we have more time to review it. Getting these things on a Thursday night, and we're each one single person, and when there's an awful lot of stuff to read. I mean, the audit is an inch thick. The budget we have to go over, the compensation plan. That's why I appreciate the board asking or approving, tabling the compensation plan. It's a lot of stuff for one person over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to review. And so I would appreciate us getting the hard copy budget sooner than in the board packet. And that's all I had. I know I went from down to the negative, but I'm not trying to be negative. Thank you very much, Madam
Thank you,
Mayor.
David. Mindy?
Continued prayers for you, Marla. Thank you for the update. And since Mayor Nation mentioned something about prayer, I think I've stated this before, I'll state again that I get a text every Tuesday, right around the time the meeting starts, reminding me that this person is praying for me. And I can't, praying for me and the board, can't thank that person enough. Appreciate it. Wanted to thank Misty for the report that she provided on the benefit comparison. That was very helpful information. I know I was one of them that had requested that. Thank you to Stacy, Mary, and Dawn for coming and enduring this long meeting. Appreciated the conversation, as a few have said. Appreciated that we did have some citizens here to represent their desires and interest. Congratulations to the 911 call center. And then I have an announcement. Believe there's not fall cleanup, but cleanup Siloam this Saturday. Is that right? Keep Arkansas beautiful. Okay. Stacy, do you have a little bit more information? What time and where do we meet? Okay. I think the city will probably meet at 10. I think the city will probably make Facebook announcements about it.
I thought we
and then
were
can
meeting at
share
your
those.
house, Mindy.
Well, that's fine. You can. Yeah, as long as you clean up my house first.
For 22nd, isn't it October 22nd?
This Saturday.
Yeah.
Is that it, Mindy?
That's it.
All right. Thank you. Brad?
I just congratulate Siloam Dispatch. They are part of the public safety team, and beauty of them, they for years there's dispatchers up there that still recognize my lovely, charming voice, but they're unsung heroes. They process a lot of the things that people see in the field, but from a different viewpoint. So congratulations to them. And then there's just a ton of activities going on this fall in Siloam Springs, and they're free, and all you have to do is participate. And so I'm just thankful for that. And for that, Madam Mayor, I suggest we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.